across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and a very good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And coming up at midnight, of course, it is our phone-in. And it is a full hour of just you and me talking. That's it. Your chance to talk back and have your say. What I want to chat with you about at midnight is this. 4 in 10 Britons believe that women's equality now discriminates against men. Okay? 4 in 10 adults in Great Britain think efforts to promote women's equality have gone so far that men are being discriminated against themselves. Findings from a major global survey ahead of International Women's Day suggest that just over half of men, that's 51%, felt this way, compared with a third of women, 33%. So that's what I want to talk to you about. Do you think that feminism has done its dash? Do you think that it has gone too far? Do you think that women have got it all their own way now, and that it's time to roll it back a bit and start favouring men? I guess that is the question, and it's open to men and women to answer it, really. I mean, we have seen this sort of hyper, women thing going on at the moment, these trad wives, which I find, I don't know, I won't colour the pot at this stage, but I find them really annoying. And even the sort of the Meghan Markle, fluffy, squeaky voiced, oh gosh, look at me, I'm perfect in every way and I'm going to cook dinner for my man, it is a little bit nonsensical. But I would be interested to hear what you've got to say about it. So 4 in 10 adults believe that women's equality now specifically discriminates against men. And this is to a background where the UK has been awarded its lowest ranking ever for workplace gender equality. So the UK's performance on female full-time employment was particularly poor at 68.9%. A sluggish pace in tackling gender pay gap and worsening employment levels push UK back to 18th in the PricewaterhouseCoopers index of OECD countries. Women's worsening unemployment and participation in the workforce has pulled the UK behind Canada to its lowest ranking for workplace equality amongst large economies, and that's in a decade. So, what is the truth? What is happening? And why do 51% of men believe that women getting ahead is preventing them from doing so? I'd love to hear examples, of course, that would be amazing. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000, and you can text the word talk and leave a message to 87222. So that's coming up at midnight, and before that we have the fabulous, I always love it when he comes in, we've got Kevin Schofield coming in to take us through the newspapers for Wednesday. Van Connor will also be chatting to us about a couple of films that he's been looking at for us, and Phil Dave will be looking at some of the tech news that is around at the moment. So that's everything that is coming up in the next 3 hours. But right now, I want to talk to you about the tariffs that were announced late last night. In fact, we broke the news. If we talked about that, do you remember? We broke the news actually about Ukraine. But also those tariffs that came into effect and the market's starting to fall. Well, they have continued to fall through the day, and that is across the world as well, as people nervously wait to see what Donald Trump will do next. And that is the problem here. Markets don't like uncertainty, and we know that Donald Trump tends to do things on a whim. So I want to look at these, what a global trade war could look like. Because with Trump putting these tariffs on countries, of course they're going to respond. And that is exactly what Trudeau in Canada has done. He has responded, and he said, for a smart man, that is a dumb thing to do, which Donald Trump will not like. And he has already hit back at Canada and said, well, if you put up tariffs, if you put tariffs on us, we'll just keep going. And that, by nature, is a trade war. China has done the same thing. China has declared that whatever kind of war America wants, they will fight to the bitter end. And they mention trade war or war. That they're not going to be pushed around by America. Fighting words, literally. And as for Mexico, well, they're going to decide and let Donald Trump know on Sunday what they're going to put on American goods. So whichever way you look at this, it's not looking good. And of course, we've got the EU, which is expecting massive tariffs as well. And even the UK. Donald Trump has said, well, I still haven't, you know, decided about the UK. We'll see. Because he was annoyed that Starmer hugged Zelensky. And it's as arbitrary as that, right? We know that Donald Trump believes that these tariffs will be paid by us, but they will be paid by American consumers. And they've said there'll be some pain for American consumers as goods go up by 25, 50%, whatever. Target has already said they're going to be pushing their prices up, and others have said the same. So he keeps insisting, though, that even though there is that pain, it'll be short term. Both things can't be true at the same time, I know, but this is Donald Trump for you. But he has said that it'll be short term, but until manufacturing is set up. That's years away. That's years. It could be decades until America has built up its own manufacturing capabilities, even if it can, in all instances of stuff that they've usually imported. So we're in it for the long haul now. Tit for tat is already happening. And for Donald Trump not to expect that, I think is quite bizarre. Stock markets have fallen. So is this it? Is this the beginning of a world tariff war? It's been tried before by America, failed, led to the Great Depression. So let's talk to Laurie Laird, my favourite little American, economist and US political commentator. Laurie, good to see you.
Petrie,
this is
loving the hair. I love your hair.
Such a girly thing to say, isn't it? Thank you.
We're going to get into some heavy stuff, so I thought
we are. So thank you for softening. Thank you for softening the blow. Look, Laurie, this is already happening, okay? So Donald Trump has already hit back at Trudeau, who's hit back at Donald Trump. China have done the same. Mexico will do the same. Europe will do the same. Where are we going with this?
Who knows? Because this is the odd thing, that Donald Trump's tariffs are not necessarily pegged to economic stuff, right? The tariffs that started this all off were the 25% on Canada and on Mexico for social reasons, for fentanyl coming across the border, for immigrants coming across the border. We know that the amount of fentanyl that came across the Canadian border to the US border, I could probably hold in my hand. So it's difficult to see where this goes because it's not obvious what his economic goal is. He's using these tariffs, at least in the first instance, to address social things.
But it's also, when you and I have talked before about the markets, what the markets really hate, what the economy really hates, is uncertainty.
Without a doubt.
And I don't even think that Donald Trump knows what his plan is, let alone the markets being able to stabilise at any point and decide what they're going to do next. And the Fed, of course.
The markets are behaving in a way that is surprising me. We've got the main U.S. stock indices down about 3% over the past 2 days. That's a reasonable move. But that's not an emergency move, right? I mean, when we heard that the Chinese came up with as good an AI chip as some of the NVIDIA in the US did, we saw a much bigger fall in the U.S. stock markets, and many would say that the U.S. stock markets are overvalued anyway. You could have seen this kind of a correction on any given day. I'm surprised at how easily the markets are taking this in their stride. I don't know. I feel they're being naive. I think one thing that may be happening is that Donald Trump's economic team is pretty sound, right? We've talked about some of his more quirky choices, for the head of national intelligence, for the head of the Health and Human Services. The Treasury Secretary is a sound person. His deputy is sound. I don't know if investors are thinking, okay, we're just going to try and ride through this because there are adults in the room when it comes to economic policy. I don't know why they're thinking this. I think this is a huge deal. I think that the detrimental effect on the U.S. economy, even if these things were reversed right now, exactly what you say, the uncertainty, the volatility in policymaking is the sort of thing that makes investors say, not touching it, and Donald Trump has paraded a couple of Asian investors through saying, we're going to invest, X hundred billion. We don't know if that money is ever going to materialize, right? It looks good on television, but we don't know if this investment is actually going to come. I think there are some huge concerns about the state of the U.S. economy right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, businesses that are thinking, oh, we don't want to... His thought process, as far as I can figure it out, is that if we make it really expensive... If we make it really expensive, he thinks for them, it isn't, it's for Americans, then they'll come and set up their factories in America and there are no tariffs. Likewise with Canada, if you were our 51st state, then you wouldn't have any tariffs, right? So it seems that there's always another reason for these, but they don't add up because no business is going to invest £500 billion into a country where the economy is on a knife's edge. We talked earlier about the non-farm payroll coming out on Friday, which I think will provide America with quite a shock.
Well, let's get to that. And this is the key economic indicator for any given month. And there are some numbers that indicate that the U.S. economy is not doing as well as it might have done. But before we get to the jobs number that we're going to see on Friday, there isn't this massive unemployment problem in the U.S. And I find this incredibly frustrating. Here as well in the U.K., when you hear policymakers talk about, we're going to create jobs, good jobs, who's going to fill these jobs? The unemployment rate in the U.S. right now is at about 4%. Now, there's always, a little bit of guesswork at what your natural rate of unemployment is, but you are always going to have some unemployment, right? You're always going to have some people who do not want to find jobs or will not find jobs. 4% is a low rate of unemployment. To build these plants that Donald Trump wants to magic up, you need construction workers. Unemployment rate for construction workers is under 2%. There isn't this jobless crisis in the U.S. that Donald Trump is trying to solve. It's absolutely peculiar. But we are seeing a slowdown in the U.S. economy, as we spoke earlier. We saw a fall in consumer spending, about 2/3 of the U.S. economy. If that starts to fall, that's when you start to worry. It fell for the first time in January. First time in 4 years when we were in a pandemic area economy. Here's the problem. Usually if you see a slowdown, the central bank, the Federal Reserve, can tinker with interest rates. They may put them down, but they are worried about what these tariffs may do to inflation. And this is self-inflicted by Donald Trump.
I mean, and earlier on today as well, I was looking into some states that are going to go bankrupt, Nebraska being one of them. They've got about 2 weeks worth of money left in Nebraska. And they're putting that down to, it's a big farming area. Sorry, my microphone is behaving badly. It's a big farming area, and of course all ranches and things like that. And the undocumented workers that worked for under minimum wage to keep these ranches afloat and to keep this state afloat have gone.
They've scarpered.
They've scarpered because they don't want to be rounded up by ICE and sent to God knows where. And
there's another problem there. I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but this is underreported. A lot of these farms would produce food that went through to American aid. It went to USAID. That was a massive, something like 20% of American grains were then shipped as aid. The government paid for it. Now that that has wound up, that is a lot of surplus right there.
But also Biden was giving subsidies, wasn't he, for climate reasons and to farmers as well, and that was taken away, I think, almost immediately by executive order as well. But we're talking about a state like Nebraska going bankrupt, but America's got its own budget coming up, hasn't it? It runs out of money in 10 days.
The 14th of March, big deal. Now, you would think that because there's a Republican majority in both houses, that it would be easy to get a budget through. But there, every once in a while, those majorities in both houses are pretty small. Majority much smaller in the House of Representatives, the bigger chamber. But there are some Republicans who are not quite on board with what Donald Trump is doing. A number of things that the tax cuts that Donald Trump wants to enact may not be all that healthy. It may not be that easy to get a budget through. And then we may have in a couple of months something called the debt limit, completely arbitrary, but US law says America can only borrow so much. That's still hanging there. Once that's hit, America can't do a whole lot.
He wants to borrow $3 trillion, doesn't he, at the moment?
Yeah, with a budget deficit of over 7%. That is big by historical standards. You don't tend to see that big a budget deficit when your economy is growing.
If we see a battle, let's turn our attention back to Canada, because this is heating up now. You know, Trudeau standing there saying, for a smart guy, this is a dumb thing to do. Now, all Donald Trump will hear is, this is a dumb thing to do. We know his ego is relatively, well, very fragile. And he's already said, if you put tariffs up, which Trudeau has said they will, they're going to match the 25%, Donald Trump's going to come back with another 25%. He said, whatever you put it up to, I'll put it up. How nasty could it get, do you think? We've yet to hear from Mexico. I suspect that's going to be just as punitive. But how bad could it get? I mean, the Ontario governor has been saying, we've cancelled our orders with Musk. We could switch off the electricity. Ontario supplies the fuel to Washington and to New York State and all of those. It could get really nasty, right?
I don't think Trump, well, first, let's go back to Trudeau. I mean, this is a man on his way out who has been taunted by Trump throughout his career. I think he was just having a little bit of fun. He won't be around for that much longer. But it doesn't feel like anyone in the U.S. administration understands how integrated these three economies are. Any given car that is sold out of Detroit may cross the Canadian-American border 6 or 7 times during its assembly process. That's how integrated these economies are. And slightly similar on the Mexican border, although with the auto industry, US and Canada are really, really integrated. Does that vehicle or semi-built vehicle have a 25% tariff every time it crosses a border? And these are precisely the manufacturing jobs that Donald Trump wants to save. I mean, analysts' best guess are that profits of all of the big 3 U.S. manufacturers will be completely wiped out once these tariffs take effect. Not a great way to save manufacturing jobs. I mean, car companies are the biggest source of manufacturing jobs in the U.S. economy. But really quickly, only about 9% of Americans work in manufacturing. This fetishization, this romanticism of manufacturing jobs is weird. We have it here in the UK as well, but most Americans don't work in these jobs, and most Americans work. So I'm not sure what the impetus is to try and save these jobs.
What about the fuel, though, coming from America? I mean, again, Trump doesn't seem to quite understand the difference between the sort of a heavy crude that Canada produces and is refined in America, and his own oil. He keeps saying, well, we got our own oil, it's great, we got our own oil. 60 to 70%, I believe, of electricity, is that right, comes from Canada.
I love that you know this, Petrie, because this is really
it's really important, right?
Yeah, it is. A lot of heavy crude oil comes from Canada, and the refineries in the Midwest are set up to refine that. They're not set up to refine the stuff that comes out of the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America.
Gulf of Mexico.
Whatever you'll call it. I don't know. Are we going to get kicked out of the White House press room?
Well, you're not really American.
Right,
it's only the Americans that say that. So it's the Gulf of Mexico.
But the oil coming out of that body of water tends to be refined in refineries in the South.
Yeah.
So it's not so much, America is producing a whole lot of oil. Was doing that under Joe Biden as well, but that doesn't get a whole lot of mention. But it has to go somewhere to be refined until, before Americans can put it in their cars. And that heavy crude coming from mostly Alberta in Canada fits very neatly into these refineries in the U.S. You don't substitute it all that easily, and that's really important.
But he's put a 10% tariff on that, which seems, again, to be an act of self-harm.
It doesn't seem to make any sense. There doesn't seem to be any understanding of trade patterns and what Americans buy. And this obsession with having a goods trade deficit doesn't make any sense. It's not a marker of a strong economy. Germany has a bilateral trade surplus. Germany hasn't grown in 3 years.
Yeah.
China has a surplus, not doing that well. Japan has a trade surplus.
But he takes a deficit.
Trump has made this as a metric.
Yeah, he takes it as an assault, as a slight. They've been taking the mick out of us because we buy more from them than they buy from us. And it's like, well, you're a bigger country for a start. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, Don.
But it actually suggests a strong consumer economy. In most developed economies here, U.S., 2/3 of your economy is what consumers spend.
Yeah.
If consumers are spending stuff and they want to buy stuff in, that usually is a sign of a strong economy. In fact, a lot of people are saying, okay, Germany, China, you've got to get your consumers spending a bit, whether they buy.
Well, that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's improving consumer confidence. It's getting us to go out and spend our money. That's why interest rates come down. That's why everything is cheap. So we go out and we buy stuff. It's a cyclical. It's a snake eating its own tail, in a sense. Listen, I want to talk to you for the next 2 hours, but I can't because I've got other guests.
The rest of your show sounds fantastic, though. I might tune in.
Thank you, Laurie Laird there, who is my favourite little American and also an economist and US political commentator. Quick break, back in a sec.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, a good evening to you. This is Talk and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock, and of course at midnight it is the phone-in. And I want to know whether you agree with the statement that female equality is now creating discrimination against men. So do you believe that that is what's happening? That women somehow are getting ahead just because they're women? They're not very good. They're a bit rubbish. You know, they're DEI hires, aren't they? They're only being hired because they need a woman there. Which I hear that argument all the time. It's so boring, but because that's not what DEI is. But do you believe that women are doing better than men now? Do you believe that because of women, men are being pushed down the food chain? Give me a call. 0344 499 1000. Got some persuasive arguments here, for and against. The deconstruction of masculinity started decades ago, says Melanie Phillips. Feminism lurched from an attempt to level the playing field between men and women to an agenda that held that men were a waste of space or worse. So that's where she thinks that feminism has gone. And it's interesting because there is an unfairness. There has been an unfairness, and I think there still is an unfairness. The fact that the very fact that people think women are only in successful jobs because they're women shows to me a discrimination. That the only reason they're there is to tick some box. That is disrespectful and it is rude, because I suspect that a female brain surgeon has not got there just because she was a woman. Right, she would have had to have done kind of exams and stuff. And actually, for female surgeons, the outcome is better if you get a female surgeon than it. That's fact. That is not me just making that up. That is you can check it out. It is a fact. Surgical outcomes are better when there is a female surgeon. But the fact that a lot of men think that women have only got the jobs that they've got because of some equality law, I will put a woman in there. She won't be as good, but we need a woman. That in itself, I think, is discriminatory and disrespectful. So I don't know where we go with this, but I'd love to hear your views. Have you got proof? Have you been sideswiped by a woman who was really inferior to you? Did she get the job when you felt you should have got the job and she was rubbish? Because that would prove your point. Give me a call. 0344 499 1000.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. I just want to send a little message to Mary. Oh, thank you. You're so lovely. Honestly, it's really, really sweet, and we've got your number. Thank you. Anyway, it is time now to talk tech. And Phil Dave joins me now, who's a talk broadcaster and editor. Hello.
Hi, Lady Hosken. Sorry, I get the feeling you're being threatened again or something.
Really? No, it's lovely. I just wanted Mary to know that we know who she is and we've got her phone number. That's all.
That, okay.
Yeah,
all right,
I mean, it's a gentle sort of hello. Anyway.
Hello, Mary.
Yeah.
Scary Mary.
She's not scary, she's pathetic, but there you go. Right, let's talk tech. Far more interesting than a wannabe whatever. Amazon has joined the quantum race with a cat.
Well, sort of. It's named after a cat. It's not actually necessarily a
Schrodinger's cat, indeed.
Well, no, that's the theory behind it. So we're going into that in a second, because Amazon, well, I'm pleased you mentioned Schrodinger's cat, because actually that hopefully means that you know what that is as well.
I do.
But Amazon has revealed basically a prototype of what's called a quantum computing chip called Ocelot, which is obviously named after a cat as well. So it's actually built on what's called cat qubit technology, and this aims to address one of the biggest hurdles in the development of quantum computers. Quantum computers is basically a computer that sort of self-corrects. So it's actually about error corrections. The quantum computers are highly sensitive to environmental noise, which causes errors really, but actually so the cat qubit are designed to make the system more resistant to the errors. And so Amazon actually believes that this particular breakthrough could lead to the development of more practical quantum computers sooner than actually expected. So potentially this could even be within a decade. Now, I know that does actually sound quite a long way off, but the truth is that actually quantum computing has been the stuff of fantasy for so many years that people don't actually really believe that they could even exist. But experts do actually still debate just how quickly these machines will become commercially viable. The Ocelot chip itself, though, which currently features 5 cat qubits, could reduce the cost of error correction by up to anything like 90%, I think it is, compared to existing methods. So this particular technology is still very much in the early stages, but it does mark a significant step towards scaling quantum computers for practical use in industries such as maybe logistics, maybe materials science, and even possibly even medicine. But experts are, well, they're sort of cautioning that actually many challenges do remain ahead, particularly in the scaling up of the technology's efficiency. So despite this progress, it does remain quite uncertain whether or not quantum computers will be able to solve real-world problems on a larger scale. But it's all very up in the air. It's just, to a geek like me, this is quite exciting, because suddenly the stuff of fantasy is one step nearer to becoming the stuff of reality. Basically a computer that sort of almost like self-repairs and prepares for all eventuality. Because we mentioned just before about the Schrodinger's cat theory, and to anyone who's not sure what that is, it's sort of on the basis of covering it. The absolute summary of it is you're covering all eventualities. So the theory is that you put a cat in a box. No letters, please. This is a theory. It's not actually happening. You'd put a cat in a box and provide it with I believe it's something to do with the chemicals in that box that could both kill it and keep it alive, or something like that. And then in theory, it's both. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Schrodinger's cat. It is the fact that two things can exist at the same time. So
because we don't know difference.
Two thought processes can exist at the same time, exactly. So the cat is both dead and alive.
Because you're providing the two gases in there that could actually keep it alive and kill it.
Both of those things at the same time, and that is what that sort of illuminated original thinking about quantum theory.
Yeah, and so as I say, very importantly, obviously, this is not anything that's that recent, so please don't start writing letters and thinking that cats are at harm here. It is a scientific theory.
Oh, it's a theory, yeah. It's always
based on the law of physics.
Yeah.
So.
It's fascinating. I just want to point out as well to those who are in the process of boycotting American goods that there is a boycott of Amazon not buying anything from the 7th, so this Friday, for a week. So anybody who's thinking of boycotting American goods, I just wanted to mention that. There's an Amazon boycott going on. So there you go. Let's talk bananas.
I won't have a whip round for Jeff Bezos just yet, but
no,
okay,
I don't think he'll need it. But it's a political thing, isn't it? Bananas now.
Yes.
I have to say that I'm excited about this because I blooming hate brown bananas. I hate bananas that are, when they start to go a bit floury. I hate them.
Oh no, it's
I like
awful.
them almost green.
When they start getting enough freckles to resemble acne.
They go into a banana bread. They go into a banana bread. They don't go anywhere near being eaten.
They go into a waste disposal for me. I can't even go near them.
They are pretty gross.
And
So I like them sort of yellow to green. That is, yeah.
I knew we were kindred spirits.
Yeah.
I'm exactly the same.
Yeah.
I only eat bananas that still got a smidgen of green on them.
Yeah, me too. But there's a new way now. It's in Norwich. A plant biotech business has developed a non-browning banana.
Yeah, I mean, this is a bit of a far cry from the sale of the century, but yes, in Norwich, there's a company called Tropic, and what they've done is they've revolutionised the idea of non-browning bananas, as you say, that could stay fresh for up to 12 hours after being peeled or cut.
Oh, that's amazing.
I know, right? So this innovation basically improves on the commonly consumed the Cavendish banana variety, apparently, which often spoils quickly. So it's disabled the genes responsible for the browning. And Tropic's bananas maintain, apparently, this is going to sound very much like an advert, but I want to quote this bit here because I thought it was so funny, the actual explanation that the company gave, and this is genius. The explanation that they've given is basically an advert. I think it's hilarious, but have a listen to this. They say, Tropic's bananas maintain their freshness for longer, making them ideal for fruit salads and pre-packaged fruit products. The company has already received approval in several countries, including the US, Canada, and is awaiting regulatory approval in the UK. So...
I just do worry a little bit with the genetic modifications and things.
Oh, please,
that are going on.
It scares the heck out of me.
Yeah.
Because it's basically genetically modified crops.
Yeah, but I mean, everything's right. If you grow roses, for example, and you splice two types of roses together, that's a genetic modification. If you get a tomato and you splice it with another tomato that doesn't go soggy, they're still both natural products, but that's genetic engineering. So it could be something as natural as that. It doesn't have to be sort of chemicals or anything.
Well,
I'd want to know.
On the plus side, and I do sort of agree with this to some degree, is that actually it's thought that this could significantly reduce waste because apparently bananas are one of the most frequently discarded food items.
There's you and me for
browning.
a start. There's 100% of us in this room at the moment.
I dread to think how many bananas we've thrown out between us.
100% of us. No, I bake banana bread and ship it off to my son. He loves it, so it's fine.
Oh, well, there you go, you see.
Yeah.
But Tropic, apparently, they're also working on making bananas more resistant to diseases that have affected other varieties. The company hopes that this gene editing technique will actually make bananas more sustainable and accessible, providing benefits, I guess, for both consumers and retailers at the end of the day.
Well, yeah, and the growers who might lose an entire crop to a disease. Interesting stuff.
I mean, one would assume that sort of it's... Yeah, I guess actually sort of from the point of view, if it's obviously before the supermarkets have purchased it, then yeah, absolutely. Then it would help them as well.
You'll be delighted to hear that my banana trees survived the winter. So
I'm ecstatic because I didn't even know you had a banana tree. So there you go.
I got 9 of them. I mean, for goodness sake, man. But no bananas.
You do represent being in the Caribbean.
Yeah. Well, you know, my garden's like a little jungle anyway. But my banana trees are my pride and joy.
Not because it's overgrown. I want to make that very clear.
No, because it is planted out like a jungle. Anyway, let's talk about this. This is brilliant news. Scanner could transform breast cancer treatment. A scanner developed in Aberdeen could be potentially extraordinary for diagnosing and treating breast cancer. How does this work?
Yeah, well, scientists at the University of Aberdeen have basically developed this new scanner. It's called the Field Cycling Imager, or an FCI. So we know an MRI, this is an FCI. And the way it revolutionizes treatment towards breast cancer is because you can actually adjust the strength of the magnetic field during scans. So it offers more precise and differentiation between tumor and healthy tissue.
Oh.
So this potential breakthrough will actually allow for more accurate tumor detection, potentially identifying previously undetectable cancer invasions without the need for dye injections. So I don't know, have you ever had an MRI where you've had to have dye put in?
Yeah, I've got to have one coming up, actually.
I
one
did not know that. I'm sorry, but even so, but yeah. So I've also gone through such things. But to anyone who doesn't completely understand what that is, if you have an MRI, it's you go into this. I can describe it really as a tunnel that makes one heck of a racket.
I hate it.
Right? It really is very, very noisy as the magnets and all sorts are flying around, and it makes this strange banging sound. Anyway, and it's a bit unpleasant at the time. However, currently with MRI technology, because it can't detect absolutely everything in crystal clear vision, the way that they do things, they do one scan first of all, then you'll be injected with and obviously it's like a human-friendly dye that is injected into the bloodstream, and then they take another scan, and then the radiologist will actually compare, the radiographer will compare the two images to see sort of what it looks like by comparison. Anyway, this hopefully means that you wouldn't need to have the dye done because it can just adjust the magnetic strength. The technology
because
is
there
really
are some people really allergic to the dye, aren't there? It can be problematic. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to it. It won't be the first one I've had. It's on my spine, but
Wow.
I'm really not looking forward to it. But I would be very happy if I didn't have to have the dye process. So that's good.
It's amazing to think that this actually sort of this.
But this at the moment
now.
is just for breast cancers, or is this for every type of?
Well, look,
scan?
what they've done is that they've identified that it sort of helps them when looking for cancerous tissues. So this is where I suppose that their starting point is. But I guess the MRI scanner had to start somewhere. And off the top of my head, I don't completely know sort of how they first came about MRI scanners. But I guess that in the same way that they discovered its purpose, I'm hoping the FCI scanner will also be able to do the same kind of thing. It will progress on to being able to diagnose other conditions in a far less invasive way than even the. I'm going to say MRI is not invasive, but it's unpleasant. Is the best way of putting it.
Unpleasant. I have to take my friend Lucy with me, and she practically comes into the MRI scanner with me. Because otherwise I couldn't stay in there. I have flashbacks to places, so I can't.
Oh my goodness me! Yeah. Okay, yes, of course.
Yeah, because of the metallic. It sounds like gunfire, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, so it's just a trauma thing for me. But poor Lucy, she literally comes in with me.
Well, I have to say very, very quickly, because this has already shown promise in detecting brain damage due to strokes, and even adding to its potential clinical applications. The lead researcher actually says he believes that the FCI scanner could significantly improve cancer treatment by actually planning and enhancing biopsy accuracy.
Oh, of
so
course,
therefore reducing the need for repeated surgeries. So if you think of it more in like the bigger picture sense, when they've actually compiled the FCI results and identified exactly where the dangerous tissue is, they could therefore make procedures less invasive.
That's incredible. I mean, I suppose MRI technology hasn't really moved on recently, so it's a good leap if when this happens. Phil, thank you very much indeed. Phil Dave, talk broadcaster and editor there. Stay where you are. We're talking movies next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. It's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And just a reminder, coming up at the top of the hour, it's Kevin Schofield. I love my Kevin Schofield days. So he'll be here to take us through the newspapers for Wednesday. But first, it's time to check in for some movies with Van the Man Connor, our film critic. Hello, Van. It's been a while.
Good evening, Petrie. How you doing?
It's been a long time.
It's been a minute. It's been a minute, definitely.
It has. Well, look, you've been busy. Talk to me about Mickey 17.
I will happily talk to you about Mickey 17 because it's from director Bong Joon-ho, who his previous film was Parasite, which famously
I love
became
that
the first
film.
movie ever that got Best International
I
Feature
love
and
that
Best
movie.
Picture. Yeah, really good, right? And of course, before that, he'd made like Oakjar, which was pretty decent, and Snowpiercer, which I absolutely love. So here he's adapted the novel Mickey 7 for the screen. It stars Robert Pattinson. He is an expendable, which is a sort of low-rent worker whose job it is to basically be the canary down the coal mine, albeit in space. Like, they expose him to radiation and all the potential predators and things like that in space. And when he's inevitably violently killed, they just print a new one and download his brain back into it. And one day this process goes wrong, and there winds up accidentally being two of him at the same time. And this is a big no-no that threatens to undermine the whole of this ridiculous, absurdist future society. So I've got a clip for you, and this is pretty much the kind of thing that they exposed Robert Pattinson to, what they put Mickey through on a day-to-day basis.
Hi, Mickey. How you doing? Are you experiencing any vertigo, nausea, or dizziness?
I guess I am feeling a little dizzy.
It's only gonna get worse from here, Mickey, with a nice fever, too. Truth is, you're exposed to unthinkable levels of radiation right now, which is why we sent you out in the first place.
Okay.
If you could give us a full description of your symptoms. So, a couple things I want to go through on our cosmic radiation checklist. First, how long until your skin starts to burn? Then, how long until you go blind? And of course, how long until you die? That's the real nut we're after. Oh, wow! Did you see that?
Did they just rip his hand off?
He just accidentally knocked it off by a passing bit of debris. Yeah, that's a perfectly average day in his life. He goes through, I think he's on the 17th variation when the movie starts, hence the title. And this is about the meeting of 17 and 18. If you're a fan of Bong Joon-ho, you're going to have a great time with this.
I am. Well, I loved Parasite. I thought, well, it was dark, but I did love it. It's interesting. That I quite like the look of that. I think I will give that. I'll give that away. Is that in movies now, or is it?
That is in cinemas. Like I say, it skews closest to Oakjar of all his movies, maybe with a bit of like the movie Moon kind of blended in there, but very close to Oakjar in terms of the tone. I thought it was very good. It wasn't great because, you know, Snowpiercer and Parasite exist.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's very good.
What about One of Them Days, which is what Patterson was having, wasn't it? Let's be fair.
Very much. One of his days is very, very much a downer, has to be said. But it's a downer for these characters as well, to be fair.
One of Them Days.
This one is a female-led comedy, female-centric, African-American themed comedy, effectively that plays kind of like Superbad or Booksmart or Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle or Friday, or if you just chucked all of those in a big blender together. So it stars Keke Palmer and I may well be getting this wrong. So, you know, you all work in more mainstream media than me, so you'll be able to tell me if I get this wrong. The artist SZA. SZA, SZA.
I think it's.
I think it's SZA.
It's
so
SZA.
Keke Palmer and SZA. Yeah, and they are the best friends who have like 8 hours to get the money in for the rent before they get evicted. And it is the wacky hijinks that they go on through the day, and everything that they can possibly try goes spectacularly wrong on them, and it truly is one of them days. It's literally like you can try and go and give blood and something will go horrifically wrong. Try and go and eat an apple pie and something will go horrifically wrong. It truly is, as I say, one of them days. So I've got a clip for you. And this is them. This is what happens when they're trying to get a payday loan to get them out of the situation. Now listen.
Do you want the loan or not? I do work at a diner. I'm a waitress. I make a steady paycheck. Okay, fine, yeah. I'm gonna see your ID so I can run your credit check. Full disclosure, my credit score is currently a little... No, it doesn't matter. As long as you have a job, arms and a leg, the system will approve you, you know. Are you having a heart attack? Oh, my God, ma'am. Are you okay? Are you? I've never seen a credit score this low. Well, when I went to business school, I had to get a loan.
That looks quite fun, actually. Did you like it?
I really did. I was not. I was expecting this to be like a couple of chuckles. This is one that I will revisit a couple of times. I could see this being one that you put on with mates, kind of thing, and you just have it on as a sort of fun, like background view, like a Friday night beer and pizza kind of a movie. Right. But it is solidly funny. It's quite sharp. It's quite pithy. It's decently cartoonish in a way that allows it to get away with a lot, but doesn't feel too far-fetched. Like, this feels no more ridiculous than literally Superbad, and it kind of plays exactly like that. I was a big fan of it. Also, I mean, just there's several like cast members that talk. Cat Williams, for instance, keeps turning up as this very Rob Schneider-like cameo presence through it. This character called Lucky, and there are things like that that I absolutely really adored about it. And I would say I would recommend this wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I liked that clip. I thought that was great. Let's have a look at Timothy Chalamet. The man of the moment, really. He can't do any wrong, can he? Although he hasn't swept the Oscars. But they're going to turn him into Ichabod Crane.
I mean, it's not bad casting. Physically, it's not awful casting.
It's pretty perfect.
To be fair.
Is he tall enough, though? I always imagined Ichabod to be about 7 foot tall. Steve Merchant tall.
I don't know, actually. Yeah, that's probably worth looking up.
That.
But yeah, apparently this is one of those like projects that was in quiet development in the Disney live action adaptation pipeline and just never got mentioned. It's called Ichabod, and it would be their live action adaptation of their previous, I think, animated stab of Washington Irving's Sleepy Hollow, which I think is a terrible idea and should never be done, because the last time someone did this, it was the last good Tim Burton movie. Let the man have that bit of legacy. Don't take that away from him, Disney. You've taken enough for the Tim Burton name. But Chalamet would not be bad casting.
Do you think they looked at Chalamet and went, who could he play? Oh, Ichabod, rather than go, we've got Ichabod and we need somebody to play it?
I guarantee you there was a conversation had about, can we convince him to buff up and play Flynn Rider in live action Tangled? You know that conversation happened at some stage.
Yeah, but I mean, Chalamet is a very adaptable actor, and I can see him playing Ichabod.
He's not bad Wonka. I liked his Wonka.
Yeah, I thought that was okay.
Yeah.
Gene is my favourite.
I was a fan of the Wonka.
Yeah. Now, what about the sci-fi war satire Starship Troopers?
One of my favourite movies ever, Starship Troopers, and apparently it's going to get a remake. Because the weird thing is, like, nobody's ever read the original Heinlein novel. Even I have never read the original Heinlein novel. But the 1997 Paul Verhoeven... Sam has. Well, there's always one. There's always one teacher's pet
but he is
that's done the extra reading.
He is the classic geek.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Well, I've never read it, but I'm a huge fan of.
Is this the one where they're acting in a show and then they do actually go into space?
And that's Galaxy Quest. So this is the one that's a big allegory for fascism. It's a big like satire of fascism and humanity in this war, and everybody is deliberately like young and pretty and a bad actor, and it's quite specifically been done that way. It's very much in the vein of the director's own previous RoboCop. Like, because he was the guy that made RoboCop, and he was very stylistically and tonally in line with that and Total Recall. To readapt it seems kind of wasteful in my eye. Like, reboot it, like do a Lego sequel or something to it, like chuck some actual money at it, but don't do away with Starship Troopers. Like, we couldn't manage it with RoboCop.
Yeah.
10 years ago
No.
when they tried to remake that. It was a terrible remake, and I can only imagine Starship Troopers will probably go the same way.
Yeah, well, I think that, you know, I'm not a big fan of remakes anyway, as you know, but
No.
because I just don't see the point. Van, there's always a point to you, though. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Van Connor there, our film critics. That's Mickey 17 and One of Them Days. Coming up, we're going to be looking at the newspapers for Wednesday. By we, I mean me and Kevin Schofield.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. It is fantastic to have your company, and with me for the next hour is Kevin Schofield, political editor at the Huffington Post UK. Bit disappointed in you, Kevin.
Why is that, Petrie?
Because you're not wearing a suit.
No.
You're showing disrespect to
Very
the office
disrespectful.
of... is this sort of oval?
It's quite, well, it's quite oval. Yeah.
It's a bit.
From a certain angle.
So a certain angle.
It's oval enough.
It's oval-esque.
Yeah.
It'll do.
Yeah.
How are you? All right.
I'm well, thanks. How are
Good,
you?
good. Yeah, I'm all right, actually. I'm going to be talking about this, and I just wanted to ask you your thoughts on this, as I do. 4 in 10 Brits think women's equality now discriminates against men. Your thoughts?
These 4 in 10 Brits, I presume, are all men.
Mostly. 51% of men that were asked felt this way, compared with women at 33%. I was quite surprised at that. But yeah, women at 33% think feminism has gone too far.
And what are they basing that on?
I literally don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think men, we had it our own way for a very long time.
Yeah.
I don't think we can complain when women, you know, get a bit of equality back, really.
It's
interesting though, because I think it ties in with the rise of like Andrew Tate and people like that. You know, there is that sense that men are being, you know, aren't allowed to be men anymore.
Yeah.
You know, they've got to hide their masculinity, and so maybe that's behind it in some way. There's a bit of a backlash to feminism, but I think it's a lot of nonsense.
I'll just read what Melanie Phillips has had to say in the Times, in the comment section. The deconstruction of masculinity started, it depends what you mean by masculinity, doesn't it, I guess, started decades ago. Feminism lurched from an attempt to level the playing field between men and women into an agenda that held that men were a waste of space and worse. The role of the male breadwinner was denounced as a mechanism for female enslavement in the home. Well, if men are going out to work and women are staying at home and they're doing all the grunt work, I don't.
Yeah, and what are men not happy now that women?
No, they're really not
staying in the kitchen.
In fact, this is what has created cavemen. Apparently, it's all women's fault.
Right.
The assault on masculinity has only created cavemen, and by telling men that they're the problem, then they become the problem, if you like, and they turn to the toxic masculinity of the Andrew Tates of this world.
Okay.
But you know, I'm a mother to a son, and he's incredibly well formed about women. He doesn't see them as a threat. He doesn't see them as his. They're his equal. He's not threatened by that.
No.
I mean, I expect when you're brought up by a mum like me, and I'm working and I'm, you know, doing all those things, then maybe he doesn't see it as a threat. But I don't know why men see it as a threat. That's what puzzles me.
No, I don't get it either. Well, you've obviously set a very good example to him, and a lot of it maybe comes from men's backgrounds. You know, if they see their dad acting like the alpha male in the household, you know, and making sure that the woman's got his dinner on the table at night, then there's a decent chance, I suppose, that they would then turn out like that. I mean, my dad was never like that. I would say that my mum was probably the boss in the house, and, you know, I've never ever felt that women are.
But I'm seeing commentary now. I mean, I've sort of said to a lot of my younger female colleagues, please pay attention to the kind of news stories that come around that actually are very anti-women. They do come into the papers. Like, if you're not a stay-at-home mum, your child is more likely to become an axe murderer or whatever. If you don't breastfeed your child, then they're more stupid than you know, all of those things. But there are adverts now circulating and commentary in America that says, what kind of man goes shopping with his woman? As if it belittles the man to do something like that. And it worries me, because we're not asking for more than men have got. I've never asked for more than men have got. And my son is a very manly man. He's very blokey, but he just isn't threatened by women. He doesn't see that as a threat to him.
No, and I don't see why you would. No, you're right. I mean, it's not like women are. Remember the old Two Ronnies sketch? Remember when it was the worm that turned? Where it was, you know, women were, and the Two Ronnies were dressed in, like, piggies and what have you. It's not like that. You know, it's not like women have decided they're going to usurp men. They just want a fairer crack of the whip. And
I get really offended, and I think it is incredibly disrespectful when certain men will look around at women in the workplace and suggest that they are only there because they are women.
Yeah.
I find that so galling and so, I mean, just, you know, how dare you?
Yeah, like it's this kind of box-ticking exercise.
There's only a woman doing that job because it ticks a box. And that I find incredibly rude and disrespectful. But I think a lot of people do look at women in the workplace and go, well, she's only there because they needed a woman.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think that is a very old-fashioned attitude. You know, it's like men of a certain age, maybe the next generation up from me, or maybe a bit older than me, who would think that, you know, oh, you know, women, why are you even in this office? Why are you even at my level? You know, because you're only there not on ability, but because of what gender you are. I wouldn't like to think that the next generation coming up are now starting to think like that as well, because of Andrew Tate and things that they're seeing on social media.
Actually, it seems that young people now are more conservative and are more concerned at women being in the workplace than 60 to 70-year-olds.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It really is interesting.
Because we've always worked on the assumption that, you know, progress would be, down through generations, that would just people would become more and more liberal, more and more progressive, more less and less conservative or reactionary, but it doesn't necessarily.
It's fascinating. I find it really interesting. I mean, look, women are now doing, girls are now doing better than boys in schools. They're more likely to be employed fresh out of university than boys. So boys perhaps are falling behind, and that is something that has to be addressed.
Of course, yeah.
But is that the fault of the women? That's the question that I have. Is women? Is the fact that women are pushing forward discriminating against men? That's the question, really. Does that cause, is it causal, that the fact that girls are doing better, does that cause boys to do worse, or is there another reason?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know, but you would like to think that boys would see it as a bit of a kick up the backside and say, well, maybe I've got to raise my game a little bit to be as good as the girls. And speaking as the father of two daughters, I'm pleased, that I'm hopeful anyway, that they will grow up in a world where women have got a much better chance of getting on than maybe their mum did or their grandmother did, certainly, and that they're going to face less discrimination and less misogyny, sexism, call it what you like. I'd like to think that, but I don't know if that's guaranteed.
It's interesting to me because our memories are very, very short, and you've just pointed that out there by saying, my mother and my grandmother had very different outcomes, expected outcomes for work, right, to me. And so it's a very short time in history that we're seeing girls now pull ahead of boys in education. And it's a very short term that men have started to feel like they're being discriminated against for the sake of women. Interesting. I mean, it's not been hundreds of years, right? It's been 70 years. It's been 60, 70 years.
Yeah, it has been. I mean, I know, speaking to my wife, that she has said, she had to put up with stuff in her 20s from men in the workplace. That
in a newsroom? You know what newsrooms are like.
Yeah, absolutely. And, she would dread to think that our daughters would have to put up with that. And I'm sure it was even worse for her mother, back in the 60s. So
it was incredibly difficult being the only female reporter.
Absolutely. Well, you've only got to look at, TV programmes, like as a political geek, I'll maybe watch old general election programmes from like the 70s and the 80s. There's not a woman in sight.
No.
So then...
It wasn't that long ago.
No, it wasn't that long ago. Even in the 90s, actually, it was... You would maybe get the odd woman. Certainly wouldn't get a female presenter.
No.
Or anything like that. So, I think men have just got to kind of suck it up a bit, and just think, right, well, to see it as a challenge. Fine, OK, women are now on a level playing field. Great. Well, it's... As long as there's no favouritism, as long as it's a genuinely level playing field, then what's the problem?
But this is interesting because this has come through. This is from Max in Minchinhampton. I don't know where that is. Lovely word though. I work in the city and I'm in the process of replacing an experienced team member and have been told by my group CEO that I have to find a female candidate. I pushed back and asked, what if I find a male that, with all things considered, is best for the job? I was told, tough employer female. I respect equality, but this is not equality. You see, I think that is equality. I think that is telling Max to not hire in his own image and to go and find somebody who is just as qualified, presumably, because this is what DEI is. This is a whole confusion about the fact that, a woman's just there because, like I was saying earlier about female surgeons, for example, you have a much better surgical outcome with a woman with a scalpel than you do with a man. It is fact. It is just there, statistically speaking. But there will be a lot of people who go, I don't want a woman because she's there because of DEI. And what he's talking about is DEI. And what it is saying is don't go down the usual road and get the usual person, look for a woman. Now, if he can't find one that is qualified, I don't know what the position is, that is qualified enough, then he can go back to his boss and say, look, all the women that I have found are not qualified enough. So maybe we have to rethink this. See, I think that is equality.
Yeah, I mean, if he's being encouraged, as you say, to look for someone not in his own image, just so you don't go for the easy option of subconsciously or not just looking for another bloke, basically, then yeah, I don't see a problem with that either.
It was interesting because when I worked with the military, there was I'd get chatting to the lads over a few beers occasionally, and very interesting what you find out actually when people's guards are down. And I was speaking to a squadron leader who from the RAF, who was telling me that the military was starting to suggest that they needed women in fighter jets. And mostly as navigators at that point, not pilots, in the two-seated Tornadoes. And he was saying to me, he said, we are deliberately recruiting women that we know will not pass because we don't want women in the jets. I mean, that was 30 years ago, but nonetheless, I had that conversation.
Jeez.
So that to me was absolutely fascinating, and I suspect a lot of that did go on in those very sort of male jobs. I don't think I don't like women only shortlists. I don't think women should get a job if they're not right for the job. And like in that regard, I agree, an entirely level playing field. But I don't have a problem with looking for somebody who may be different to what you would normally hire.
No, and I think if you are consistently recruiting women because they're women, even though they're not patently not...
You're not doing them any favours.
You're not doing them any favours. You're not doing women any favours at all.
No,
because then people are just going to say, oh,
well, she's rubbish. All women are bad.
Yeah, exactly. So.
No, it's a very interesting topic, I think, and I'd be fascinated to understand where a lot of people are coming from on this. Yeah, interesting. Now, let us have a look, because there's a lot going on in the United States of America.
There is, yeah.
We have, of course, the State of the Union address, 1 o'clock our time. I'm off air, which my team are really thrilled
So we
about.
can look forward to waking up to that tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Goodness
we
only
know
knows what he's going to say.
We know what he's going to say.
Well, you say that.
Oh,
you never completely know what he's going to say.
That is very, very true. So the Washington Post is looking at, of course, these tariffs. Trump locks in sweeping tariffs on Mexico and Canada. Markets fall with a new risk of inflation. Now, I was talking to an economist earlier who said, look, it's a correction more than a fall. It wasn't as big as I expected it to be. There's more economic information coming down the pike that may also cause the markets to fall, so it's not over.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, though, that already Donald Trump has hit back at Canada, because Canada said, right, you're giving us 25%, we'll give you 25%. And Trump put on Truth Social, or whatever it's called, would somebody tell Governor Trudeau, rude, Governor Trudeau, that if he puts tariffs up, I'll just match him. So, I mean, we could be looking at, if they tit for tat it,
all the way up.
Yeah, all the way up to 100%. And also, you have China, who have said, don't try and bully us. If you go this route, a trade war or an actual war, we'll fight to the bitter end.
Yeah.
Now, that is language we don't want to hear.
Well, certainly not when we're already really worried about Russia jumping into bed with Vladimir Putin. I mean, he's in that stage of his presidency at the moment where he thinks he is the master of the universe. He can do no wrong, and he's got lots and lots of people telling him he can do no wrong. So there's no resistance. He can literally do what he wants, and this is something that he said he was going to do in the election campaign. There's not a single economist really that you can find that thinks that this is anything other than disastrous, and maybe he needs to see the evidence with his own eyes before he realises. But of course, he will never ever accept responsibility for anything.
Say it's Biden.
He will find some way to climb down eventually, I'm sure, if it is as bad as all the economists reckon it will be. But in the meantime, it's causing absolute chaos.
Yeah.
And so far, and based on what he said last week when he met Keir Starmer, it doesn't look as though the UK is going to get dragged into this at the moment. We're not in the EU, And
yeah, but the latest thing that he said, because he was annoyed that Keir Starmer hugged Zelensky, is that tariffs are not off the table.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's the thing. He's such a man baby.
He's unpredictable.
To quote the Daily Star,
yeah.
You just don't know. And everyone kind of walks around on eggshells because we know that if he takes offence, then he's liable to throw his toys out the pram and
that's the unpredictability that economies don't like.
Yeah.
There's also another interesting story on the front here. Workers assemble electric vehicles in China. And in the EV race, says the Washington Post, China caught up with the West and then charged ahead. Nice use of the word charge there.
Yeah, very good.
Charged ahead. I'm a frustrated sub-editor, really, I think. But this is really interesting because it's also at the time where Tesla stock is collapsing.
Yeah.
He's lost $100 billion since January, January the 9th, I think it was 20th. Anyway, he's lost
heart bleeds, really.
$100 billion. He's still got $394 billion.
Oh, that's good.
For now.
Yeah.
But most of his wealth is tied up in that stock.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and he's leveraged a lot of loans against it because, of course, you don't have to pay tax when you borrow against your shares. But China and these cars, they are really, as this says, charging ahead now. They're cheaper. They're offering more than Tesla are offering. They're not charging an extra $99 a month for self-driving stuff. That's going to be it's going to be standard. And it seems that a lot of people don't like his politics.
No, and that is always going to be the danger, isn't it? People can vote with their wallets and decide, well, I don't want to give any money to Elon Musk. But the figures are quite startling, really, that China now produces more than 60% of the world's electric cars and 80% of the batteries that power them. I mean, it sounds like they've pretty much got the market cornered. And does Donald Trump really want to go into some trade war, let alone an actual war? Does he want to get into a trade war with China?
20% now on China. And a good percentage of Teslas are made in China.
Yeah.
So there'll be a tariff on a Tesla leaving China to go to the US.
Yeah, I'm not sure Elon
20%.
Musk would be terribly happy about that.
Does he know? I mean, I have no idea. And also, shutdown looms. This is at the bottom of the Washington Post. This is to do with the fact that America runs out of money in a week, 10 days.
Yeah, I mean, this seems to come round.
We've seen it before.
Yeah, well, not that long ago.
Not that long ago, where federal employees were not paid.
Yep, absolutely.
By the government, because they had no money.
It's fairly chaotic.
It is. It is a lot of, and the non-farm payroll jobs come out on Friday as well, which will be a kick in the teeth, I think, for the States as well. Anyway, we're going to take a break.
Okay.
Shall we? And then we'll turn to the Times in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is...
I'm just giving some gossip to Kevin. He's looking at me going, I didn't know any of that. I'll tell you in the next break. The Times newspaper for Wednesday, a single daily pill for over 50s could replace NHS health checks. The NHS could prevent thousands of heart attacks and strokes by offering people over 50 a single daily pill instead of a health check every 5 years. I don't know what it's called, the polypill.
Polypill, yeah.
Oh, it's a statin. And 3 blood pressure lowering drugs. And my best mate's friend is a heart surgeon, and he said that everybody over the age of 50 should be on statins. That's interesting, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It does make me feel a bit older because I now come in to that bracket.
Have you had your 50 health check
I haven't.
yet?
No, I haven't. No.
Oh.
No, I haven't even been contacted.
Oh.
Which I'm a bit worried. I keep meaning to chase it up.
Chase it up,
I should,
yeah.
definitely. But no, I wouldn't mind this at all. If it's going to
No,
stop me
I
having
think
a
it sounds
heart attack,
great.
then
A heart attack and stroke, 2 of the biggest killers in men and women.
yeah.
Blood pressure lowering drugs. It could replace NHS health checks for over 50s. The polypill has been found to reduce the number of heart attacks and strokes in older people by as much as a third.
Yeah.
You'd still want a bit of a health check though, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, you would, but although it says here that uptake is low, that only 4 in 10 people take up the offer of an appointment, they will all be men.
Yeah,
I guarantee that. But yeah, so if people aren't willing to go through a health check, then maybe they'll be more willing just to pop a pill, and that saves them the bother. So, and if it's going to potentially save your life, then why not?
It doesn't mention here the cost, does it?
No, but I'm guessing...
But it's probably cheaper than those appointments.
Well, quite,
maybe.
yeah. And if people aren't turning up for them anyway, and yeah, it probably is a bit more cost effective.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
So-
it's that sounds like a really good thing, and you've got to start having all those prostate checks as well.
No, I know. My mum tells me the same. No, I don't look at me like that. I keep meaning to contact the GP because they haven't contacted me.
It's only because my dad died that way.
Yeah,
so
no,
just,
it's very...
it just is and it was just a complete waste, a stupid way to die, really.
Totally. Yeah, it is. No, because it's one of those kind of, if you get
it's early enough, it's fine.
You're fine, yeah.
Right, Zelensky, we're ready for peace. Zelensky tells Trump. He's been told, hasn't he, by the United Nations leader and by other people, he's got to bend the knee a bit.
Play the game a little bit. Yeah, he had a conversation this afternoon with Keir Starmer, I think just before he posted this rather lengthy statement on X, basically going as far as he could without an outright apology to Donald Trump for what happened in the... Not that I think he's got anything to apologise for.
I don't think he has either.
But he, as I said, playing the game. He talks about, you know, how we're ready for peace, because the comments he said to journalists at the weekend about how peace was still far away, that seemed to have annoyed.
He didn't mean that he didn't want it, though.
No,
he said, look, it's got to be the right peace, otherwise it doesn't work.
Yeah, everyone wants peace, but it's, you know, peace at what cost, you know? Anyway, he says we're ready for peace. He set out proposals for what that initially might look like. Said that he regretted how it had gone in the White House, and also that he's ready to sign this minerals deal at the earliest possible convenience. So hopefully this will be enough to get Trump back on board. It's obviously on the back of Trump.
He will see that as a win. I think Trump will.
And the key will be whether he goes ahead then with this military aid suspension.
What I think is very interesting is that the mineral deal that Trump wants to make with Zelensky, with Ukraine, in a sense will already provide a backstop of security, won't it? Because if Donald Trump thinks that Putin's going to come across and nick his minerals, he may be more prepared to defend the land.
Yeah, and also
he's
you're going to
paying
have
into.
Lots of American workers.
Yeah.
Although you are kind of potentially putting them in harm's way. They're not military people. They are, you know, blue collar workers. But
they're only in harm's way, as I was saying yesterday, if Russia breaks the peace deal.
Well, quite. Yeah, exactly. So no, I can see the logic in it's not a military backstop, but they are American citizens in the country, and does Putin really want to
mess with
kill
that?
a load of Americans?
Yeah.
Probably not. So I get the logic to it, and at least it will be a start. You know, I think if they sign this deal, it's not as onerous.
It'll take the heat out of it.
It will a bit, you know. It'll please Trump, as we've just been discussing. You have to try and play the game with him and keep him relatively sweet. Unfortunately, that is just how he does business.
I was saying yesterday that perhaps if Zelensky had gone in and given him some random medal and promised him a statue, it would have gone very, very differently.
Yeah, a bit like Starmer the day before
did.
with the letter from the King.
Did that make you feel a little bit sick?
Well, yeah, maybe, but I can understand why he
No, I
did
understood,
it.
but I still had to go and have a
treat.
shower afterwards.
It worked a treat,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe Starmer did as well.
It was a bit creepy.
Although I'd love to know Trump's response when he saw the picture of Zelensky with Prince Charles. I keep saying Prince Charles, King Charles.
I think
it's only been 2 years.
I think
King
he would
Charles.
have.
I'm sure he wouldn't have liked that.
I think he was pretty jolly baity, as they say. Interesting points here, though, as well, in this piece about Zelensky. There's Friedrich Merz, the Germany's likely next chancellor. This was very interesting because they weren't able to commit at that meeting of the Coalition of the Willing. But I did suspect that he would come up with the goods because he's been quite vocal already about a more independent Europe, and he indeed is going to do that. He said he plans to loosen the country's fiscal rules to bolster defence spending, so that's good news. What about J.D. Vance?
Oh, dearing. Well, I mean, we'll come on to it, I think, in another papers. Other
all right, we'll leave that
other
one
papers
for now.
give it quite big licks.
Yeah.
It was, absolutely shocking, really.
Really.
I think in many ways, he's worse than Trump. You know? In many ways.
In many ways.
I mean, I think his behaviour in the Oval Office was
was appalling, absolutely disgraceful. The Daily Mail, let's have a look. Zelensky's olive branch to Trump after PM's plea. So he's been told to suck it up, hasn't he, basically?
Yeah. It's, as I say, he doesn't want to, I don't think, go the full apology route because that would be humiliating. But when you read the statement that he put out, it's very emollient, and he wants to basically make nice now with Trump. He has to swallow his pride a bit and to realise, look at the bigger picture here. It's more important than
a petty
his ego, really. Yeah.
Let's have a look at the Daily Express. Yeah, this is where they've really taken umbrage at this, haven't they?
Yeah.
They show a photograph of serving soldiers. I think that's RMP. Yes, it is. It's the Royal Military Police, I think. There's a red beret on the top. And the Fusiliers, and they're carrying a coffin draped in the Union flag. Clown Vance's slur on 636 war heroes. Veterans brand US Vice President J.D. Vance a clown after he suggested the UK had not fought in a war in 30 or 40 years. And he was talking about this sort of random country with these stupid soldiers or whatever he said.
Yeah, and I think, and he talked about 20,000 troops. Now, the only two countries that have confirmed that they would put boots on the ground are Britain and France. So
to call us a random country.
Pretty clear who he was talking about. Now, it all kicked off, lots of criticism, and then sort of middle at lunchtime he then responded on Twitter saying this is absurdly dishonest to say I did not mention Britain or Ukraine or France. And then the question of that was, well, who did you mean then? And weirdly, he has someone must have taken his phone off him because he's not been able to answer those questions because he was talking about Britain and France. There's no doubt. And the thing was, even if he wasn't, there was lots and lots of countries that
died supporting
in Afghanistan.
Because interestingly, that is the only time since NATO was formed that Article 5 was triggered in defence of the United States of America. It is the only time in its history that it has been triggered. And all of the NATO allies went to their defence and went to support them in Afghanistan and in Iraq and died in the pursuit of defending America. He's going some random country.
Yeah, because they are wanting to create this narrative which states that America has defended Europe, and it's been a one-way deal for a very long time.
And it's the only time it's been enacted.
When actual fact that is not the case at all, and it's just hugely disrespectful.
It is.
To those men and women who died
in defence of the US.
Yeah, absolutely, but in pursuit of American foreign policy, both in Iran, Iraq and Afghanistan.
Exactly that. Right, let's take a break, and Kevin Schofield and I will be back in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. Good to have your company, and with me is Kevin Schofield, who's the political editor at the Huffington Post UK. And The Mirror, we've just had this come in hot off the press. Again, saying Trump sidekicks slur. On the day Britain's VE, that's Victory in Europe Day, celebrations are unveiled, the US Vice President pours scorn on the heroes of our armed forces. And do you know what? It was during a Fox chat, wasn't it? And I think they get too comfortable with those Fox interviews because they know it's going to be a friendly interview. So they just start gabbing.
Totally.
They're not on their mettle. Do you know what I mean?
They're not being interrogated. Yeah. It's like a cosy little fireside
But also
chat.
they're not even thinking, oh, I mustn't slip up, because they know if they do, it's fine. It's propaganda TV.
Yeah, it was Sean Hannity who was interviewing him, and the clip I saw, he wasn't asking him questions really. He wasn't challenging him. No. A good journalist would have picked him up and said, well, who do you mean by that? I mean, surely you don't mean Britain and France, but he just went along with him and agreed with him. You know, so you're right. Yeah, that actually maybe catches them off guard. And
I think it catches them off guard, and maybe that's a secret. No, I'm just joking. I was going to say maybe that's Fox's plan to get the fox in the hen house. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that it literally and metaphorically.
4D chess.
yeah. Just sit back and let them talk, and then get them. So that's The Mirror. Not very happy with that. The Daily Telegraph, this fabulous photograph of King Charles there in all his naval glory. I can't read that paper though with his.
I think it's in the front of this.
It's on
the Times as well, isn't it?
On the Times,
He's
I think.
on flagship carrier HMS Prince of Wales.
All right.
Before it sets sail for Japan on a mission to promote global security and stability. I mean, it's quite interesting, isn't it, though, that he is being again. I hesitate to say it rolled out by the government because he's apolitical, but you know, we saw him meeting Zelensky, and now global turmoil.
Well, the turmoil in that neck of the woods, of course. I wouldn't be surprised if Japan had asked for this vessel to be there because of the China-Taiwan situation, and Japan is very, very nervous about the China-Taiwan situation. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if that's a bit of heading on down to that neck of the woods to a bit of show of strength, maybe.
Indeed. But no, it's it's.
He looks resplendent though in his.
Well, you tend to forget as well that he's been treated for cancer.
Oh yeah.
He is looking very well actually. He's looking better than he did.
He's actually. Yeah.
Much better.
Health-wise. And of course, he served in the Royal Navy as well. I don't know whether he reached the rank that he's wearing. But
looks like he saw a lot of action. Gone by those ribbons.
Those little ribbons on there. It's a very interesting situation down in those waters. So it will be interesting to see what happens next there. Reeves ready to cut public spending to provide extra firepower for the military. There'll be a lot of people not very happy about that.
No, and it's interesting, isn't it? It sort of juxtaposes with what Germany are talking about now. They're talking about loosening their fiscal rules in order to basically
scrape together that money,
borrow the money. Whereas Rachel Reeves is still, she says, for now, and is sticking to the fiscal rules, will cut elsewhere, which is much easier said than done. There's already been a backlash over the foreign aid cuts. If the next thing they're going to go after is welfare, presumably, again, that's going to go down very badly in the Labour Party.
Well, they are, aren't they? They're coming up with the plans now.
I just don't. And they're talking about 3% of GDP in the next Parliament. A lot of people saying, well, that's not going to be enough.
That's not going to be enough.
So.
No, it's not going to be enough.
I don't know how they're going to do it without putting up taxes.
5%.
I think you might just have to.
Yeah, I think that is
bite the bullet on that.
That is the case. The Guardian. I stand ready as Zelensky again, and then at the bottom here, mothers killed by sons in 9% of femicide cases. Nearly 1 in 10 of all women who died at the hands of men in the UK over the past 15 years were mothers killed by their sons. What? I'm not going to go and visit mine again then.
Yeah, I mean, it was a real
shocking.
jaw-dropper of an intro, that 1 in 10
What?
killed by their sons. I mean, it's just beggars
Data analysing the
belief.
deaths of all 2,000 women killed by men since 2009 has given an unprecedented insight into the hidden scourge of matricide, with more than 170 mothers killed by their sons.
Absolutely shocking, isn't it? I mean, the whole issue of male violence against women and the number of women who are killed by men every year.
Yeah.
Jess Phillips famously
reads them out
in
domestic
Parliament
violence
every every single year. But the fact that 1 in 10 were killed by their own
That is
offspring.
extraordinary.
Yeah, isn't it?
Experts said mental health problems and substance abuse, along with grown-up children spending longer living with their parents due to a lack of affordable housing, was some of the key factors behind the killings. Misogyny was also cited, with mothers sometimes considered to be a safe space for children to mete out violence. And there is a growing hidden domestic violence now that is children domestically abusing their parents.
Jeez.
And it is a growing silent statistic. Because people, it's embarrassing.
Well, people don't want to admit it, of course not. And another interesting line to talk about how, you know, this could be the tip of the iceberg, because a lot of, you know, women will be living in misery. They've not been killed by their sons. That's obviously extreme
but there is
cases.
Violence
but there will
against
be
them.
violence, and they will be terrified living under the same roof.
I mean, that is just such a horrible
strong
thought,
young men who can do them
what can you do?
Physical harm.
I mean, it's and I do think that probably, you know, the lack of affordable housing, you've got the older sons staying at home, but it is specifically boys killing their mums. It's not girls killing their dads, right?
No,
it's
no,
not,
exactly.
It's not. So it's not just that they're living at home. It's not just mental health issues, because girls have got those as well, or young women have got those as well. So there is something else happening here.
Yeah.
But that is a really shocking statistic.
It's staggering,
it
isn't it?
really is extraordinary. The eye, I love that mouse. The creation of the woolly mouse. First step to genetically engineering mammoth-like elephants. Scientists want to populate the Arctic to slow global warming. Critics question ethics and viabilities. It's a little ginger Donald Trump mouse.
It is, yeah. So they're obviously testing it on mice initially. It's quite like Jurassic Park, this, isn't it? It's bringing back woolly mammoths. But
a woolly mouse.
I'd like to have explained to me what the science is and why this would slow global warming. I mean, if it does, then great. But I'm not sure what the science is behind it.
I don't know.
Why creating woolly mammoth-like
I thought they were going to
elephants.
populate the Arctic with little woolly mice.
Yeah, when you first
I'd
read
want to go
it,
and visit them. I'd want to go there.
Yeah.
You'd want to be there with those little woolly mice. They don't look like the horrible grey mice that I live with constantly in my house, even though I've got a lazy cat.
Have you got a cat? Yeah, we've got a cat that...
She is. One time she killed. I hadn't got my painting studio ready yet, and I had my easel in my living room, and I was talking to my producer Gabriella actually, and I was just chatting to her, and I went, "Oh my God!" And she went, "What?" And I went, my cat has killed a mouse and put it on my easel."
Oh, how sweet!
That's not sweet. She knew what she was doing.
It's a present, isn't it?
It's not a present. She was flicking the claw at me. Well, yeah, she doesn't like me very much. But yeah, no, she doesn't kill the mice. I just live with them now. I was like, oh, whatever.
My wife found one in her Ugg boot one time.
Oh, really?
And it was still alive. It obviously escaped from the cat and found somewhere warm.
Did she find it by putting her foot in there?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Ooh.
Did she kill it with her foot?
I'm not sure. Maybe she did, but she got the fright of her life. Yeah. Not as big a fright as a mouse, probably.
My younger brother one time, we were going, anyway, we put on a pair of boots as we were on a journey somewhere, and he was sort of squidging his toes and doing all that. And I was going, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" He said, "I don't know, something in my boot." And then when we got to where we were going to, he tipped out his boot, and it was a mouse that he'd been squidging in between.
Oh, poor thing. The mouse,
It was an ex-mouse.
Yeah, what a way to go.
Yeah, what a way to go. So, UK scrambling to save Ukraine peace deal as Zelensky grovels to Trump. Hopefully that is what Trump needs.
Well, I think he would appreciate a bit of grovelling. I mean, grovelling is fair enough, actually. It's quite sad, really, to see Zelensky having to do that, which he did.
Yeah, I agree.
He really did have to swallow his pride, but, you know, when you're dealing with a guy like Trump, he wants to see you crawl. What you don't want is him to say, right, thanks very much, but what else are you going to do for me?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
She wouldn't put that past him either, you know.
You want a bigger mineral deal.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the eye. Let's take a break for the last quarter. Just a quick break. Kevin and I'll be back in a second.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, it's Petrie here with you, and with me is Kevin Schofield, political editor at the Huffington Post UK, and we're looking at the Sun newspaper for Wednesday. I have to say that all the way through all of the papers, no one has got a decent word to say about Meghan Markle's new television show.
I can't say I'm surprised about that. She doesn't enjoy the greatest of press in this country, but yeah, I haven't watched it. You might not be surprised to learn, and I'm not in a hurry.
No, I'm not
to see it. I think a lot of people watch it just for the sort of car crash value. Like, is it as bad as it's made out to be?
You see, Netflix don't care. I read a statement about Netflix and about this programme, and they said, look, we don't care if people watch it as hate watch, as long as people watch it.
As long as they watch it, yeah.
So it doesn't really matter to them. But they think that their biggest audience will be people watching it who don't like her.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, a lot of people will like to watch it just because they'll think it will reaffirm what they already think of her.
I don't need Meghan Markle to teach me how to cut cucumbers and carrots and put them next to hummus.
No, or make fruit rainbows. You seen this fruit rainbow thing that she does?
I don't think I could be bothered with that. I mean, what is the point?
No, definitely not. But yeah, it's the type of thing I think my wife might watch like one episode, just as I say, just to sort of satisfy your curiosity, if it's as bad as people are making it out to be.
It's not for the UK audience. We're a little bit more cynical, I think, than the American audience, and they might like oh my God. Apparently her voice has gone up a few octaves.
Right.
She's doing all the sweet voice and everything.
And they still like the royal thing, you know what I mean? I know they're not officially in the royal family anymore, but people still they are still trading on the name.
Yeah.
They were literally trading on the name, weren't they? It was like Sussex. They're allowed to use that.
Well, she also said, apparently, because I've not watched it, but reading about it, somebody called her Meghan Markle and she said, I'm Sussex now. But anyway, not for me. It's not my sort of television anyway, and I really don't care. So I've just had a message here from Sam in Lancashire, who says, Petrie and Kevin, I'm now laughing, finally, thank you. My cat has just brought in a dead mouse for my dog. The dog ate it.
Oh my goodness.
Yuck. Thankfully we live by fields, so it was a safe mouse. Yeah, they're tiny little mice, aren't they? They're quite sweet,
small,
actually.
Yeah,
the mice in my house they've been working out. There's nothing I can do about it because my cat refuses to do anything. So anyway, the other story is Jenner's dumped by wife. I don't know who these people are.
Jermaine Jenas, you not remember?
Oh, wasn't he the one sacked by the BBC?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he's an ex-Premier League footballer who was sending sex text to somebody.
Some producers or something?
Was that what it was? Yeah, to a female colleague, because he was on the One Show. I mean, he was a real high flyer as a presenter. Did One Show,
Was he doing well, was he?
He was doing really well, but then they've obviously dropped him. And I think
he does stuff on talkSport as well, does he? Oh, okay.
Well, no, he was on talkSport when it all kicked off.
Oh, yes. Oh,
he
yeah,
came
I
on and
remember
did it, that night. It was,
Yeah, I remember that. I think we got an email about that. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, he has been dumped by his wife.
Not that much of a surprise, I don't think.
No.
It's quite embarrassing for her, obviously, humiliating.
Yeah. I'm like, so what? You know, it's like, reap what you sow, and etc. etc. The Metro. Oh no, we've got to do the Star while we've got time, haven't we? I don't want to run out of time for the Star.
It's a good one. It's another good one.
Trump deputies vile slur on Brit heroes.
JD Dunce. It's a good headline.
Dunce. That is a very good headline. I like it a lot.
And he's got the Dunce's cap on.
Yeah, and the guy liner.
He does, doesn't he? His eyes. He does wear.
He's definitely. He didn't used to have eyeliner on. I don't know if it's natural. Do you know what really annoying me about JD? Well, everything annoys me about JD Vance, to be fair, but he really reminds me of somebody, and I can't remember who it is. Do you ever get that? Every time I see him, I'm like, oh, he reminds me of someone, but I can't quite bring it to my mind who it is, and it's driving me nuts.
No, I don't. It doesn't remind me of anyone.
Oh, it does me, and it's really annoying me. Anyway, Vance slams us as random country who haven't fought a war in 40 years, but 636 of our troops died in Afghanistan and Iraq fighting alongside the US. I don't think they care if we're angry.
No, they don't. It's a good intro though. US Vice President JD Vance has proved he's as big a moron as his orange man baby boss by grievously insulting Britain's heroic troops. That's a good intro.
Apparently has a penchant for sofas. I will say no more. Yeah. Google it if you want to find out what I'm talking about. Yes, and in the background they've got Donald Trump also with a dunce cap on.
Looking particularly orange.
Yeah, I mean the way that they sort of tag-teamed Zelensky in that bullying showdown
was just really uncomfortable to watch.
Was really horrible, wasn't it? It really was. Beavers out now. I think the beavers are back and they're trying to repopulate England with beavers now. And
they've been extinct for about 400 years.
And they seem to be doing a good job as well. They seem to be building the dams that people want them to build. There was one river where the council had been arguing about it, I think for 15 years, about building this dam. And within a week, the beavers had done the job. and they couldn't argue with it because
Beaver story of the day.
A family of beavers moved in and built a dam.
Beaver story of the day.
Beaver. I always like a beaver story. It's like just. Did you come up with that? You're not doing enough work if you're coming up with stuff like that. You didn't hear it.
It's quite a suggestive headline.
Yeah. Yes, of course. It's the Star. Thought for the day. Daily Star thought for the day.
Oh, what a wazzock.
What a wazzock. Talking about JD Dunce. It's a very good headline. The Metro also is saying, lest he forgets. Again, showing rows and rows of cars, of funeral cars with coffins, sacrifice coffins in British troops arrive home from Afghanistan in 2010.
I'm guessing he won't come with Trump when he eventually has his state visit.
Probably not.
I wouldn't have thought that would be a very good idea.
I don't think so. But he's not gonna acknowledge it. He's just going to be in with Donny, having a burger, saying, "Oh, they're so sensitive."
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
No, yeah. As I say, they're in that phase at the moment where they just think they can do anything they want, insult anyone they want, and no one can touch them. But
yeah,
they might be right at the moment, but I don't think it'll last.
Who does
forever.
he remind me of?
It'll come to you later.
I've been thinking it for days. I can't think who it is. It's really driving me nuts. I just catch it at the corner of my eye and I think, oh, that's... And then it isn't, and I can't think who it is. Anyway, the Financial Times, the FT, Trump tariffs trigger Europe sell-off as anxiety over global slowdown rises. BlackRock to buy Panama ports after White House claims of China influence. That'll be interesting. Maybe that'll stop... Donald Trump going down to Panama and stealing, or trying to take the Panama Canal.
Yeah.
And minerals packed, Kyiv ready to reach a US deal.
Yeah, I mean, there's speculation in his big speech tonight. That's what Trump will announce, that they've signed the deal, or that the deal is going to be signed. But we'll wait and see. It was meant to be signed last Friday before it all kicked off in the Oval Office. So, believe it when I see it.
I know, but this State of the Union address is going to be really interesting. I suspect that's what I'll be watching in the car on the way home.
What time does it start?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
And I won't be able to sleep because I'll be annoyed. But it'll be. It is his first time addressing both houses, and explaining really what he's been doing for the last 6 weeks. So that's what it's about. It's about just making it clear where he's going and what he's doing with America. And I'd be very interested. Is it Dominic Raab?
What that reminds you of?
Yeah, that's just something. I don't know if it is
way
Dominic
about
Raab.
him, a bit like. It will come to
anyway,
you.
it will come to me. It will come to me. So the State of the Union, I think it will be really interesting because they might say in America he's got some splaining to do.
Yeah, it does.
Because there's been quite a lot.
Yeah,
that has been done. I mean, some people say, he's hit the ground running. He's done loads. He's done this. He's done that. But has he also done damage while he's done it?
To what effect, really? And I think we're only just beginning to see the potential effects of, the side effects of the impact of what he's done. So, yeah, it's one thing I will say is it's good for journalism. I know that's not the most important thing, but it certainly has kept
there's never a dull moment.
It's kept us busy.
Yeah, I mean, there's and we're not, mind you, we're not busy looking at what our lot are up to, are we?
No, I know it's been good for Starmer actually. This is the first decent week he's had probably since he became Prime Minister.
Kevin, thank you. Kevin Schofield there, going through Wednesday's papers. Right now it's over to you and me, so it's just the two of us. And we're going to be talking about whether you think that women's equality has now caused a discrimination against men. It's very specific, that question. 4 in 10 Brits now think that efforts to promote women's equality have gone so far that men are now being discriminated against. Do you actually believe that? Do you have evidence? Can you show me the evidence where somebody who, not just a woman took your job, but a woman who wasn't worthy of it took your job? 0344 499 1000, and you can message me as well if you use the word talk and then your message to 87222. Give me a call.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and a good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And this is your hour. This is all you and me. And it's the only hour on the station now that you get free rein. Well, you know, within the law and decency and things like that. But it's your chance to talk back. And I think this is a really interesting topic. And obviously I have my own ideas about this, but I am also genuinely interested to hear from you. The story is that 4 in 10 Brits think that women's equality now discriminates against men. Findings from a major global survey ahead of International Women's Day suggested that just over half of men feel this way, compared with a third of women. I'm surprised that a third of women think that feminism has gone too far, or equality has gone too far. I don't think equality could go too... How can equality go too far? Because equality is about being equal, isn't it? But do you genuinely think that women are now more equal than men? That women have it easier than men? Do you now genuinely believe that women are doing better than men? They're achieving more than men? They're earning more than men? They are really totally more equal? Do you think, genuinely, that women are doing better than men? Because if that is the case, that's not what we wanted. It's not what we wanted. Equality is equality. Feminism is about equality, being equal to, not lesser than and not more than. And I never, ever would want to be hired if I wasn't good enough to do the job that I'm doing. I would absolutely walk out. If my boss called me and said, actually, we only hired you because you're a woman, I would tell him where to stick the job. I genuinely mean that, and my colleagues and my friends know that that is true. I never want to be employed, and I don't think many women would ever want to be employed as a sort of weaker version of a man. I just want to be thought of as a broadcaster, not a female broadcaster. You never say, oh, Kevin O'Sullivan, he's a male broadcaster, right? You would never say that. He's just a broadcaster. So if I'm ever referred to as a female broadcaster, I find that insulting, because I'm just a broadcaster, the same as the blokes here, right? So I don't know many women that would want that, that would want to be hired if they weren't good enough for the job. Because if you're not good enough for the job, you're going to fail at the job, right? And nobody wants to fail. So I'm interested, and there's also a question in one of the pieces that I've been reading, actually, about masculinity. That masculinity has been called into question. Of course, I can't find the article now, but I'll paraphrase it. That masculinity has been called into question now. That men aren't allowed to be masculine. And I'm genuinely interested in this question. How would you define masculinity? What is the definition of masculinity that you think you're being deprived of? What is it that is being stolen from you by women wanting to be equal to you? Not greater than you, but equal to you. Because I don't know what you mean by masculinity, because I think we all have a different view of it. I don't have a view of masculinity that is, I don't know, like the caveman, I guess, is what we're thinking of, is it? What is masculinity? And what have you lost by women being around? I'd love to hear that. 0344 499 1000. And you can text, by the way, the calls are charged at national rate for that, anybody listening on the radio. And you can text the word talk and your message to 87222. So what is masculinity? And do you genuinely believe, and this is for women as well, this question, do you genuinely believe that women are doing better than men in all walks of life? In jobs, in pay, in seniority, in everything. Because I suspect that is the only argument you can have if you think that women are being favoured at the cost of men. And I'm really happy for you to call me and tell me, yes, that's exactly the case. That actually women are earning more, getting the better jobs, the senior roles, the big jobs. They are doing better than men. And I would love to hear that from you. Sam has got back in touch and said, it's me again. Hello, Sam. Has it heck gone the other way? You're my favourite presenter and I think the most impartial and fair. Thank you, Sam. That's very kind of you. So has it gone the other way? Are men now being discriminated against? I don't see it. I don't. But what is masculinity? I think that's a really interesting question. And you women out there will also have your version of masculinity. I have my own version of masculinity. I'd love to hear your version of masculinity. And as a man listening, when you think of your masculinity being called into question, what is it that's been taken away? And I can only imagine that if you can't call me about that, then it's a moot point. It means it hasn't been. That your masculinity hasn't been reduced by women doing better than you. That you haven't been discriminated against because there are women in the world. Give me a call. 0344 499 1000. Let's speak to Ron. Ron, good morning to you. Ron, are you there?
Petrie.
Hello, my love. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Actually, I quite agree with everything you say. I'm 74 years old, which is pretty old.
Yeah.
But I feel emasculated by the way the country has turned out about female equality. I feel as if I've been emasculated.
You do feel like you've been emasculated by women?
Yes, unfortunately, yes. Because I've always respected women. I love my mother. My mother was downtrodden by my father, who was like an old-fashioned, a late Victorian, if you like, miner. He was working in the mines. He went out to the pubs Monday night, Friday night, Saturday lunchtime, Sunday. He went out all the time for drinks. Every penny he got, he gave his mother less than half. And I hated for it. But now it feels as if the whole of society is turned around. You can't look at a woman and say, hello, love, it's wrong. Hello, sweetheart, it's wrong. And I find that very difficult.
But how has that emasculated you? I don't mind if people say hello, sweetheart to me. You can call me and say hello, sweetheart to me at any point you want to.
Sorry, we're getting to the point where we're scared to speak to women. We're scared to say, hello, love, hello, sweetheart, in a shop, you know. I open the door for them. I help them with the kids in the car when they're struggling with infants, you know. I just think that women have been so empowered that it scares us enough. I find that very sad. Because we all love women, we respect them, we empower them. And I just feel as if the whole of society it's turned us upside down.
But do you want does it worry you that women are equal?
Not at all, no. It worries me that women are empowered, that they feel they're superior. I'm sorry, Petrie, but that's the way it looks.
You think women think they're superior to men?
Yes, I do, absolutely,
Okay.
yes.
All right, that's interesting.
For the last 5 to 10 years, I really do, yes. Sadly.
And this superiority, it manifests itself in that if you say something to them they don't like, they'll say, don't call me that.
No, it's not just that. It's as if what we say isn't important anymore. We feel disempowered. I really believe that. Because I think women feel so empowered now that we men feel less than masculine. I mean that seriously. Remember, I'm 74, so it's not important to me at my age, but it's more important for guys in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, because women now look down on us, and I just feel there's a loss, you know?
But I wonder if, Ron, that is always the fault of the woman. Is it because men are not rising up to match what women expect of them now? Maybe women, because they can have their own work and they can have their own money, they're not going to settle for for want of a better phrase, a substandard guy that they might have had to marry to leave their home 60, 70 years ago, that they'd rather wait, because they can afford to wait, for a man who would match their expectations. So maybe men aren't coming up to meet women's expectations.
Petrie, I think you're brilliant. I listen to your show every night, but you're wrong in that. I think it's more like women, when they get together, an ugly group of people, they encourage you to be nasty. It's not as simple as how men feel. It's more important about how women feel. Now, trust me, if 4 or 5 women go for a night out once a month, they all decry male masculinity. So it's not as simple as what he's saying. As wonderful as how he expressed it, it's how women generally feel about men.
But if it's 5 women going out for a drink together, they might be going out because they just want to be 5 women going out for a drink together, and a bloke's approaching them, they're kind of going, look, I'm out with my friends, can you leave me alone?
I'm just talking about 5 women talking collectively and encouraging each other.
But don't you think that men encourage each other as well? If it's 5 blokes out, don't you think they encourage each other to be more blokey?
No, absolutely not. When 5 blokes out together, just chatting generally, talk about sport, work, football. When 5 women go together, they talk about how bad the husbands are and how good looking this guy is over there. Honestly, it's a totally different thing to it. I'm sorry.
No, you don't have to apologise.
Ever.
I just find it interesting. There are a lot of women that I know that won't settle for a bloke because they're going, well, actually, I don't need one. It doesn't mean they don't want one. It's just I don't need one. So I'm gonna live my life until somebody that really interests me come along. And I think that has been a substantial change.
Yeah.
Because women used to, the only way they could leave the home before was to be married, right?
Yes, of course. But Petrie, I just find that women, I'm a gent, I love women, but I just find that women now cut you off if you try to open the door for them. Cut you off if you say hello, no love. Cut you off if you say hello, love, or don't mind, love. Oof, don't call me love. All right,
but what are you following those statements up with, though? Because I'm quite interested, because if a bloke opens a door for me, I'd say thank you very much. I don't have a problem with that. If somebody says, all right, love, excuse me, darling, do you know what the time is? I'd say yes or no, depending on whether I did. It wouldn't bother me.
Yeah, I was just trying to go on the bus or go into shops or something, you know? Women just sort of sitting by an aisle and say, excuse me, love, don't call me love. And I think, oh, God, that's so sad, you know? I'm just trying to move outside. So
you're not trying to strike up a conversation or...
No, never. Just to be polite and say, do love, back off, not your sweetheart.
Well, that's a bit rude, isn't it? That's pathetic. That's just horrible people.
I was born in the 1950s. It's just common sense to me. your humanity, just bit of be nice to people. And women don't do it anymore. They're just like,
honestly, I hope that isn't all women. I mean,
I'm sorry,
like I said, my
Petrie,
age group, I mean, I'm invisible anyway, but if somebody does say, morning, darling, can I have the time? I'd say yes.
But every time I say it, I feel like I shouldn't say it again. I feel as if there shouldn't be a sad thing to say, you know? Like, extremely love or sorry, sweetheart.
I can't imagine why somebody would be offended by that.
Yeah, but going back to your main thing, you know, about women and men, about talking about, I just think we've lost our way, you know? I certainly think...
What would you like it to return to? What is your ideal for women?
My ideal is 1960s. Respect, love, pleasure.
When women didn't really work, they stayed at home?
No, not that. When women went out and danced and said hello to people, nothing sexual, nothing sensual, just when women smiled when guys spoke to them, you know? Yes,
but I think they do. The younger women are probably just smiling, with all due respect, at younger men. But I think they do, and I think the 60s to go back to the 60s.
I watch you on TV. I think you're wonderful. Watching night after night, but I think on this point you're lost. You're wrong.
You don't think that young women smile at young men?
No, not at all. They're obnoxious.
Okay. Well, then our birth rate is definitely going to collapse then, isn't it? There's going to be no new babies.
I've lost speed.
Bless your heart, Ron. Yeah, thank you. Really interesting call. Thank you very much indeed. I wonder if that's just a generational thing, but it's interesting that he wants to go back to the 60s. And of course, that's when he would have been a young man, right, at 74 now. So he would have been a teenager then. So that, yeah? Am I right? Is my maths okay? Yeah. So he would have been a young man then, and girls were more fun because they were with young men when he was young. And, you know, maybe those younger women now are not going to smile and try and encourage Ron at 74 years old. I don't know, it's just a theory. But it's interesting to go back to the 60s. And also women did have fewer choices. They couldn't get a mortgage in those days. A woman couldn't get a mortgage. I'm not even sure they could get bank accounts in those days off their own bat. So, you know, that was a time when women were more dependent on men. They just were. And so they did get married and they did, you know, move with their husband, and they may not have particularly been madly in love with them, but that was a way out of the home. And women were more dependent on them being the breadwinner. Maybe they could have a tiny little job in a corner shop, but they wouldn't have been able to get the big bucks enough to be able to buy a property. So they were more dependent on men in the 60s. So where is the evidence that men are now being discriminated against? That women are doing better than men are? Because I haven't seen any. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock, and we're talking about this survey that's come out. It's a global survey that suggests that 4 in 10 Brits think women's equality now discriminates against men, that there is actual discrimination against men by the fact that women have sought equality. And it's just really interesting, because I was just talking to Ron there about women in the 60s, and I said, I don't even think they could have bank accounts then. Well, they couldn't. A woman in this country couldn't get her own bank account until 1975. So you imagine trying to live an independent life without a bank account. What? Anyway, we have come a long way. Back in those days as well, only a third of women actually had jobs. The rest of them stayed at home. So a third of women had jobs. Nowadays, it's around 72% of women that are working. So really interesting that men now think, 51% of all men believe that women have got it better than men now. That somehow we've skipped over them, and we're now doing better. And it's at the same time, actually, that the UK has been awarded its lowest ranking for worse workplace gender equality in a decade. This came out today. Sluggish pace in tackling gender pay gap and worsening employment levels pushed the UK back to 18th place in the PricewaterhouseCoopers index of OECD countries. Women's worsening unemployment and participation in the workforce has pulled the UK back behind Canada to its lowest ranking for workplace equality among large economies in a decade. So why is it then that men believe that this is the case? What is it anecdotally? Why do you believe, against the evidence, right? I know we're a post-fact country now. We don't believe in facts anymore. We don't like them. But nonetheless, this is evidence here that women are doing worse for gender equality in the workplace than 10 years ago. The first time it slipped in 10 years. So we're doing worse. Women's worsening unemployment and participation in the workforce has pulled the UK behind Canada to its lowest ranking for workplace equality among large economies in a decade. The sluggish pace of change on women's earnings relative to men's, which means closing the gender pay gap, could take more than 30 years. So all that bunkum. And by the way, the Equal Pay Act law came in the 70s, and we've still got another 30 years to go until we close the pay gap. Explain that to me. So in the 70s, it was made illegal not to pay women in the same job the same money as the man sitting next to her. And according to this, closing the gender pay gap could take another 30 plus years. So are you really telling me that women's equality has gone so far that it's discriminating against men? Where's the evidence? Where is the evidence? Because the evidence is saying exactly the opposite. And if you've got any anecdotal evidence or any evidence that you'd like to share with me, please do. The decline means that the UK fell to the second amongst G7 countries and now sits behind Canada. Iceland, New Zealand and Luxembourg are the best performers in the index, which looks at factors including the gender pay gap and employment levels. While the UK did marginally improve the gap between the average earning of men and women, it was held back by the relatively slow pace of change and worsening unemployment levels and participation in the workforce relative to men. And this is based on 2023 data, although this is a new story. The UK performance on female full-time employment was found to be particularly poor at 68.9%, putting it 27th out of 33 of the OECD's most important economies. 27th out of 33. And you're telling me that women's equality, feminism, has gone so far that as a man, you are discriminated against. Really? I mean, I'm not saying you're not. I'm just saying the evidence so far has shown me that you're not. So if you believe the opposite of that is true, I'm happy to live like I did with Ron. You know, I mean, give me a call, 0344 499 1000, and message me on 87222. I'm loving your work this morning, I have to say, when I said that JD Vance reminds me of somebody, but I cannot quite put my finger on who it is. It's driving me round the twist. Now, I've got a couple of good suggestions, actually. Kevin has said, could it be Stephen Crabb you're thinking of, the former Works and Pension Secretary? You are right, there is a likeness there, actually. And Joanna from Salisbury has said, JD Vance looks like Tyler Labine. He does, actually, doesn't he? That actor. I love it. Any other suggestions as to who JD Vance looks like? I love that. And some messages here about equality. It's all about nature. Explain why there are more females in nursing and care and more men who decide to be builders. It's called choice. There's absolutely no reason that a female cannot be a bricklayer if she wouldn't wish to, other than they simply don't want to. Yeah. So what if they don't want to? I mean, that's fine, isn't it? I'd quite like to learn how to do that properly, though. I'd like to be an electrician when I grow up. I think that'd be, or a plasterer. Oh, love watching plasterers work. They're so brilliant. Oh gosh, that's a really long one. I might read that in a bit. What exactly is the woman pay gap? Are you saying that for doing the same job, women are paid less? Gil, yes. That's what it means. That's what they've taken. They've taken the average pay of men and women and sort of averaged it out across high pay and low pay, and women are still that 30 years to close that gap, even though it was illegal since 1970s. Kaz has said, not forgetting that women didn't even have proper contraception in the 60s. That's true. I agreed and disagreed with Ron. Some younger ladies despise being called pet names, and that's their choice. I myself love a bit of chivalry, and I don't see very much of that these days either. I'm 52, by the way. Just started reading the first paragraph of that. I'm going to save that. I'm going to save that until later. I'm going to take a quick break, but I will be back.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good morning to you. It is Talk and it is Petrie, and I am here until 1 o'clock. And there's some brilliant texts coming in, so please do keep them in. We're talking about why it is that 4 in 10 Brits now think that female equality has gone too far, and we are now discriminating against men. So women, in other words, are doing better than men are in jobs, in money, even though the evidence does not stack that up. But it's just interesting to me why men are feeling like that. And also what's interesting to me is what this statement is, that men are losing touch with their masculinity. And I don't know what that means. I don't know what you mean by masculinity and what you've lost by women coming up to your level. That interests me. I don't know what you think you've lost. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate, and text the word talk and your message to 87222. It's a brilliant message from Jenny, which I'll read out in a little while. But earlier I was talking to Kevin Schofield, who is the political editor at the Huffington Post UK, about how 4 in 10 think that women's equality now discriminates against men. This is what he had to say. Your thoughts?
These 4 in 10 Brits, I presume, are all men.
Mostly. 51% of men that were asked felt this way, compared with women at 33%. I was quite surprised at that. But yeah, women at 33% think feminism has gone too far.
And what are they basing that on?
I literally don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think men, we had it our own way for a very long time.
Yeah.
I don't think we can complain when women, you know, get a bit of equality back, really.
It's
interesting though, because I think it ties in more with the rise of like Andrew Tate and people like that. You know, there is that sense that men are being, you know, aren't allowed to be men anymore.
Yeah.
You know, they've got to hide their masculinity, and so maybe that's behind it in some way. There's a bit of a backlash to feminism, but I think it's a lot of nonsense.
I'll just read what Melanie Phillips has had to say in the Times, in the comment section. The deconstruction of masculinity started. It depends what you mean by masculinity, doesn't it? I guess started decades ago. Feminism lurched from an attempt to level the playing field between men and women into an agenda that held that men were a waste of space, and worse. The role of the male breadwinner was denounced as a mechanism for female enslavement in the home. Well, if men are going out to work and women are staying at home and they're doing all the grunt work, I don't.
Yeah, and what are men not happy now that women
are they're really not
staying in the kitchen?
In fact, this is what has created cavemen. Apparently, it's all women's fault. Right. The assault on masculinity has only created cavemen, and by telling men that they're the problem, then they become the problem, if you like, and they turn to the toxic masculinity of the Andrew Tates of this world.
Okay.
But, you know, I'm a mother to a son, and he's incredibly well formed about women. He doesn't see them as a threat. He doesn't see them as his... they're his equal. He's not threatened by that.
No.
I mean, I expect when you're brought up by a mum like me, and I'm working and I'm, you know, doing all those things, then maybe he doesn't see it as a threat. But I don't know why men see it as a threat. That's what puzzles me.
No, I don't get it either. Well, you've obviously set a very good example to them, and a lot of it maybe comes from men's backgrounds. You know, if they see their dad acting like the alpha male in the household, you know, and making sure that the woman's got his dinner on the table at night, then there's a decent chance, I suppose, that they would then turn out like that. I mean, my dad was never like that. I would say that my mum was probably the boss in the house, and, you know, I've never ever felt that women are
But I'm seeing
threat or anything like
commentary now. I mean, I've sort of said to a lot of my younger female colleagues, please pay attention to the kind of news stories that come around that actually are very anti-women. They do come into the papers. Like, if you're not a stay-at-home mum, your child is more likely to become an axe murderer or whatever. If you don't breastfeed your child, then they're more stupid than you know, all of those things. But there are adverts now circulating and commentary in America that says, what kind of man goes shopping with his woman? As if it belittles the man to do something like that. And it worries me, because we're not asking for more than men have got. I've never asked for more than men have got. And my son is a very manly man. He's very blokey. But he just isn't threatened by women. He doesn't see that as a threat to him.
No, and I don't see why you wouldn't. You're right. I mean, it's not like women are... remember the old Two Ronnies sketch? Remember when it was the worm that turned? Where it was, you know, women were, and the Two Ronnies were dressed in, like, pinnies and what. It's not like that. You know, it's not like women have decided they're going to usurp men. They just want a fairer crack of the whip.
And I get really... really offended, and I think it is incredibly disrespectful when certain men will look around at women in the workplace and suggest that they are only there because they are women. I find that so galling and so... And I mean, just you know, how dare you?
Like it's this kind of box ticking exercise.
There's only a woman doing that job because it ticks a box. And that I find incredibly rude and disrespectful. But I think a lot of people do look at women in the workplace and go, well, she's only there because they needed a woman.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think that is a very old-fashioned attitude. You know, it's like men of a certain age, maybe the next generation up from me, or maybe a bit older than me, who would think that, you know, oh, you know, women, why are you even in this office? Why are you even at my level? You know, because you're only there not on ability, but because of what gender you are. I wouldn't like to think that the next generation coming up are now starting to think like that as well, because of Andrew Tate and things that they're seeing on social media.
Actually, it seems that young people now are more conservative and are more concerned at women being in the workplace than 60 to 70-year-olds.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It really is interesting.
Because we've always worked on the assumption that, you know, progress would be, you know, down through generations, that would just people become more and more liberal, more and more progressive, more less and less conservative or reactionary, but it doesn't necessarily.
It's fascinating. I find it really interesting. I mean, look, women are now doing, girls are now doing better than boys in schools. They're more likely to be employed fresh out of university than boys. So boys perhaps are falling behind, and that is something that has to be addressed.
Of course, yeah.
But is that the fault of the women? That's the question that I have. Is women? Is the fact that women are pushing forward discriminating against men? That's the question, really. Does that cause? Is it causal that the fact that girls are doing better, does that cause boys to do worse, or is there another reason?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know, but you would like to think that boys would see it as a bit of a kick up the backside and say, well, maybe I've got to raise my game a little bit to be as good as the girls. And speaking as the father of two daughters, I'm pleased, I'm hopeful anyway, that they will grow up in a world where women have got a much better chance of getting on than maybe their mum did or their grandmother did, certainly, and that they're going to face less discrimination and less misogyny, sexism, you know, call it what you like. I'd like to think that, but I don't know if that's guaranteed.
It's interesting to me because our memories are very, very short, and you've just pointed that out there by saying, you know, my mother and my grandmother had very different outcomes, expected outcomes for work, right, to me. And so it's a very short time in history that we're seeing girls now pull ahead of boys in education. And it's a very short term that men have started to feel like they're being discriminated against for the sake of women. Interesting. I mean, it's not been hundreds of years, right? It's been 70 years. It's been 60, 70 years.
Yeah, it has been. I mean, I know, speaking to my wife, that, you know, that she has said, you know, she had to put up with stuff in her 20s from men in the workplace. That
in a newsroom. You know what newsrooms are like.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, she would dread to think that our daughters would have to put up with that. And I'm sure it was even worse for her mother. You know, back in the 60s. So
it was incredibly difficult being the only female reporter.
Absolutely. Well, you've only got to look at, you know, TV programmes. You know, like as a political geek, I'll maybe watch old general election programmes from like the 70s and the 80s. There's not a woman in sight.
No.
You know, so then
it wasn't that long ago.
No, it wasn't that long ago. Even in the 90s, actually, you know, it was, you would maybe get the odd woman. Certainly wouldn't get a female presenter.
No.
Or anything like that. So, yeah, I think men have just got to kind of suck it up a bit, you know, and just think, right, well, to see it as a challenge. Fine, OK, women are now on a level playing field, great. Well, it's, as long as there's no favouritism, as long as it's a genuinely level playing field, then what's the problem?
But this is interesting, because this has come through. This is from Max in Minchinhampton. I don't know where that is. Lovely word, though. I work in the city, and I'm in the process of replacing an experienced team member, and have been told by my group CEO that I have to find a female candidate. I pushed back and asked, what if I find a male that, with all things considered, is best for the job? I was told, tough employer female. I respect equality, but this is not equality. You see, I think that is equality. I think that is telling Max to not hire in his own image and to go and find somebody who is just as qualified, presumably, because this is what DEI is. This is a whole confusion about the fact that, you know, a woman's just there because, like I was saying earlier about female surgeons, for example, you have a much better surgical outcome with a woman with a scalpel than you do with a man. It is fact. It is just there, statistically speaking. But there will be a lot of people who go, I don't want a woman because she's there because of DEI. And what he's talking about is DEI. And what it is saying is, don't go down the usual road and get the usual person, look for a woman. Now, if he can't find one that is qualified, I don't know what the position is, that is qualified enough, then he can go back to his boss and say, look, all the women that I have found are not qualified enough. So maybe we have to rethink this. See, I think that is equality.
Yeah, I mean, if he's being encouraged, as you say, to look for someone not in his own image, just so you don't go for the easy option of subconsciously or not just looking for another bloke, basically, then yeah, I don't see a problem with that either.
It was interesting because when I worked with the military, there was I'd get chatting to the lads over a few beers occasionally, and very interesting what you find out actually when people's guards are down. And I was speaking to a squadron leader who from the RAF, who was telling me that the military was starting to suggest that they needed women in fighter jets, and mostly as navigators at that point, not pilots, in the two-seated Tornadoes. And he was saying to me, he said, we are deliberately recruiting women that we know will not pass because we don't want women in the jets. I mean, that was 30 years ago, but nonetheless, I had that conversation.
Jeez.
So that to me was absolutely fascinating, and I suspect a lot of that did go on in those very sort of male jobs. I don't think I don't like women-only shortlists. I don't think women should get a job if they're not right for the job. And like in that regard, I agree, an entirely level playing field. But I don't have a problem with looking for somebody who may be different to what you would normally hire.
No, and I think if you are consistently recruiting women because they're women, even though they're not patently not...
You're not doing them any favours.
You're not doing them any favours. You're not doing women any favours at all.
No,
because then people are just going to say, oh, well...
Well, she's rubbish. All women are bad. There you go. That was Kevin Schofield, political editor at the Huffington Post UK, discussing with me that survey. And in the meantime, just before I go to a break, a couple more of you have sent me some suggestions for JD Vance lookalikes. I got Andrew has said, JD Vance reminds me of the Labour MP Barry Gardiner. And I can see it. My producer couldn't see it. Gabriella said, no, I don't see it. I see it. I see what you mean. If he had darker hair and a darker beard, I'm with you. I'm for it. And Teresa said she thinks JD Vance looks like Jimmy Carr without the beard. Great show as always. I can see that as well. It's the round face, isn't it? Mind you, hasn't he? He's had a lot of surgery, Jimmy Carr. I mean, he would admit it as well. I think his face is more square now, but I can see it. I get it. So who do you think JD Vance looks like? Send me a message, 87222. Put the word talk up front, please. Quick break, back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good morning to you. I've got loads of messages that I've got to read now. This one, Marilyn says that she thinks JD Vance looks like Liam Gallagher with the dark eyebrows. What do we think of that? Liam Gallagher? Not so sure. Gary has a message saying, morning Petrie, no, gender equality does not discriminate against men. Only the weak or abusive ones might be aggrieved. And that's from Gary in Glasgow. Thank you very much indeed for that. And a couple of you have mentioned about the gender pay gap. The gender pay gap includes the fact that through choice, females work fewer hours and work more part-time hours and therefore are paid less in a monetary way. And then the sentence changes to something really strange that I don't quite understand. I don't think it's linked. But anyway, yes, indeed it does. But it was pointed out as well by Keith, who said that the gender pay gap, you misunderstand the term gender pay gap. It's not about being paid less for the same job, so I'll come back to that in a minute. It's the average wage for the sexes across the workplace, which is what I said a moment ago, for all people in all jobs, and they just happen to be more men in higher paid jobs overall. Well, it doesn't sound like men are being discriminated against for the sake of women then, does it really? Just that one sentence alone kind of sums it up. due to various factors such as part-time working. It's a misleading term used by feminists to imply women are paid less for the same role, which is not true and illegal. It is true. And it is illegal, you're absolutely right. Women often are in the same job as men and do not get the same money. I have a very good friend of mine, one of my best mates, who works in recruitment and will often tell me stories where she has discovered that men were getting paid more for the same role. It is, you're absolutely correct, it is illegal to do that. But then just in recent terms, if you'd want to look up what happened at Birmingham City Council and the £1 billion that they have to now pay to female workers who were working the same job as the men that were there and were not paid equal pay. And it has cost Birmingham City Council, because it went to court, and those women now are having that adjusted and going back in time to have that adjusted. And it was because, for the very reason that these women were in the same jobs as men and they were not getting paid the same money as men. So whilst you are correct that it is illegal, it is not a feminist ruse. It is true, but it is still illegal to not pay women the same money as men for the same job. But I'm afraid it does still happen. Like I said, if you want to go and look at Birmingham City Council's books, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So just wanted to put that right. Raheem wanted to said, I'm just hearing your interesting topic about gender equality and I'd like to participate. How do I do that? It's a bit late now, but the number is 0344 499 1000. We can probably just squeeze you in. So please do give me a call, Raheem. Jenny has said, Petrie, I'm sorry to tell you, but I do think of you as a female broadcaster. And when advising people on what to listen to, I do make a point of saying you're a female broadcaster, which initially got my back up. And then Jenny goes on to say, I think this matters because I generally find, not exclusively, but in the main, that female radio presenters and reporters tend to be more intelligent, wiser at a younger age, more grounded and more able to listen and remain impartial. That is to say, there aren't some male radio presenters that don't do things to a similarly high level, but I hear far fewer of them, and definitely relatively far fewer of them, in relation to the others who are, it seems, either on an ego trip of their own or maybe too unconfident in their ability and lean more on shock tactics and other lazy approaches. It's like you crawled into my head. So I will and do introduce you as a female broadcaster, but only because I think women broadcasters seem to have to work harder to get airspace to the same level as male presenters. Very true. You just take my own company here now. There's just the two of us, really. Well, there's two and a half of us, really. I do think things are getting better, but only because women have worked harder, as we seem to be better than a man of their equal pay grade. And I will make it clear here, it's graft, not a given skill. I know plenty of women who are just as small-minded and knee-jerk in their need to gain attention as many men can be. The difference is those women rarely get anywhere. And that's from Jen in southeast London. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Catherine has talked about Meghan Markle. Sussex to you, apparently, she says now. Her name is Sussex. My thoughts on Meghan Markle's Netflix series is pure narcissism. It's look at me and look how good I am, and that's it. Thank you for that. And Kenny from Edinburgh says, hi Petrie, women's equality is not equality anymore. It went from one extreme to the other. The only fair way to have equality of opportunity, men or women, black or white, whatever, the people who are the best in any given industry or situation will always be successful. We cannot have substandard talent in any position for any other reason than they are the best. I suspect that is very few people that you're talking about that are not able to do the job. Why would an employer employ somebody who's substandard just to tick a box, and then they have to employ somebody else to do the work of that person who's substandard, thereby costing them more money? I don't see it. If I was a business owner, I would want the best person for the job, because I couldn't be faffed with having to replace that person when they turned out to be rubbish. So I suspect that's a very small number. But what I find fascinating is so many of you believe that it is a large number. Therefore, I think that is what you think of women in the workplace, rather than those bosses having to tick boxes. I think that's your bias. I think that's you believing that women aren't good enough and that they shouldn't have the job and that a man should have it. That's what I think of that. Anyway, just quickly, the most surprising things that women couldn't do 100 years ago. This is unbelievable. Women could be refused service in a pub for spending their own money until 1982. What? Was I in pubs then? No, probably not. Until 1982, women couldn't buy a round at the bar with their own money.